Dozens of migrants dead in the back of a truck. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News. 46 bodies found in an 18-wheeler on a hot day in San Antonio, Texas, along with 16 survivors taken to hospitals.
The patients that we saw were hot to the touch. They were suffering from heat stroke, heat exhaustion, no signs of water.
Fire Chief Charles Hood.
The discovery is believed to be a part of a human smuggling operation. Officials have not clarified if the individuals migrated from Mexico or another country. The San Antonio police chief says 3 people are in custody, and this is now a federal investigation.
That's Fox's Matt Finn. An Amtrak train hit a dump truck on the tracks at a rural crossing in Missouri, killing 3 people, 2 of them on the train.
It was pretty scary.
She and other passengers were thrown when the train from L.A. to Chicago derailed. The cars flipped onto their sides.
There was an employee that she was bleeding pretty good, and then there was another woman that had a cut on her head.
In all, about 40 people ended up in hospitals. A police officer is at a Nashville hospital after being shot at a traffic stop in Erin, Tennessee last night by a man who then ran into the woods, police going after him. An officer in Charlotte, North Carolina, was shot in the leg early this morning, responding to a disturbance. The injury is considered not life-threatening. Police do not have a suspect in custody there. President Biden's on his way from one summit to the other, heading to a NATO gathering in Spain after wrapping up meetings with world leaders in the Alps.
They were on the sidelines of the G7 meeting where there had been talks on making Russia pay a higher price for its invasion of Ukraine. They've also been talking about trying to alleviate a global hunger crisis. Much of that crisis comes from Russia's blockade of Ukrainian grain.
Fox's Jill Nato. The Democrat-led House committee investigating last year's Capitol riot has another hearing today with a new witness and evidence. Multiple reports say a former aide to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows will testify. America's listening to Fox News.
This is it, your last chance to win the new $15 million prize of a lifetime from Publishers Clearinghouse. Today is the last day to enter to win $15 million on June 30th. So you must enter at PCH.com before it's too late. $15 million, all for you. But time is running out, so enter now at PCH.com. The $15 million prize of a lifetime. Don't miss your last chance to win it this June 30th. Final day to enter at PCH.com. Entries due 6/28. No purchase necessary. Prize paid at least $390,000 annually. Void or prohibited.
When you're an innovative business, every blinking cursor is an opportunity. What will you do with it? Will you make something better or create something new? Our Dell Technologies advisors provide you with expertise and tools with Windows 11 to do incredible things. Because we believe there's an innovator in all of us. To do more with a Latitude laptop, Dell Technologies recommends Windows 11 Pro for business. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL.
93.9 The Eagle News is brought to you in this 6 o'clock hour by the great folks at Robinson's Cleaners. It is 6:03. We're going to have a nice day today, partly sunny, and it's not going to be too bad today. A little bit warmer than yesterday. Our high around 85 degrees. Clear skies tonight with a low near 62, and the outlook for tomorrow, sunny and a high of 91 degrees. 61 right now is our current temperature in Columbia, and good morning. Here's some of the stories we are working on for you in this 6 o'clock hour. The NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board, is currently sending a 14-person team to northern Missouri, Sheraton County. They'll be investigating Monday's deadly collision between an Amtrak train and a dump truck. Missouri State Highway Patrol Corporal Justin Dunn says Monday afternoon's collision happened in an uncontrolled crossing on a gravel road.
The train had approximately 8 cars, including a baggage car. 7 cars have derailed. There are multiple injuries, and we can confirm there are 3 fatalities, 2 on the train and 1 in the dump truck.
Now, our news partner ABC 17 is reporting that at least 9 of the injured were flown to University Hospital here in Columbia. Another 30 transported to Boone Hospital Center in Columbia. Amtrak says that train was heading from Los Angeles to Chicago. Now, Amtrak has activated its 800 number for family members seeking information. That number is 1-800-523-9101. Again, that is for family members only that need information. 1-800-523-9101. There's also a broadcast report this morning on a couple of television stations saying that this uncontrolled crossing that was the scene of Monday's deadly collision between Amtrak and a dump truck is on a statewide list for needed safety improvements. KMIZ's Lucas Geisler and Matt Fleener at KMBC reporting that. Missouri State Highway Patrol Lieutenant Eric Brown, says that crossing is on a gravel road. This is near Porsche Prairie Avenue. It's near Menden.
It's an uncontrolled crossbuck intersection on a gravel road, so no lights, no electronic control devices, things such as that.
Patrol describes the investigation as active and ongoing. Again, 3 people dead at least, and dozens of others are injured. Meantime, a northern Missouri congressman who's the ranking Republican on the House Transportation Committee in Washington is thankful that first responders from across the state quickly responded to yesterday's deadly train derailment. Menden is in Congressman Sam Graves' rural district. His district has a large presence in every county with rail and farming. Congressman Graves says he's keeping in close contact with NTSB, Amtrak, and also the Federal Railroad Administration. ABC 17's Ben Fine is live right now on television on the scene. He's been there since 3:45 this morning. He just described moments ago on television it is still a very active scene as the sun rises this morning. They expect good weather today, no rain, so that will help. And again, the NTSB is expected to arrive sometime this morning, 14-person team. Much more on this on our website, 939theeagle.com. Meantime, longtime Columbia College president Dr. Gerald Bruder will be laid to rest today. The 79-year-old Bruder died last week at the age of 79. One of his goals when he arrived at Columbia College in 1995 was strengthening the sciences. Political science professor Terry Smith tells the Eagle the science building in 1995 was a former infirmary that wasn't suitable for science instruction. Now they have the state-of-the-art Gerald and Bonnie Bruder Science Center. It opened up in 2013. That was after years of hard work and also many years of fundraising here in the community.
We have the best for undergraduate forensic science program in the state. Not possible without that wonderful building and all of its equipment and the great instructors and the fine curriculum.
It's Dr. Terry Smith. He tells me that Dr. Bruder had high standards for everything, whether it involved landscaping, facilities, academics, or ethics as well. And a Columbia man who's accused of robbing the Hy-Vee gas station on West Broadway while carrying a hammer has waived arraignment and is pleaded not guilty. 29-year-old Jacob Woods is charged with first-degree robbery and armed criminal action for Friday morning's robbery. It happened just before noon. Woods allegedly had a large knife. One customer said it was so large it looked like a sword. He also had a hammer, according to the charges in the case. Court documents quoting Woods as telling the clerk, quote, "Do you know what a man with a hammer and a knife can do?" End of quote. Woods was arraigned yesterday, waiving arraignment, and he has pleaded not guilty. Our news is brought to you in the 6 o'clock hour by AirServe Heating and Air Conditioning, ensuring the air in which you live and breathe is comfortable and clean. For all of your cooling needs, log on to airserve.com. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 6:08. In sports, Cardinals beat the Marlins yesterday. Busch Stadium 9-0. Yepes hit 2 home runs. Goldschmidt is 19th of the year. Uncle Charlie, Adam Wainwright, 6th win of the year. The Cardinals now half a game, 0.5, so half a game behind Milwaukee in the National League Central. Game 2 of the series tonight. Dakota Hudson pitching for St. Louis. Rangers beat the Royals Monday at Kauffman Stadium 10-4. Ranger designated hitter Mitch Garver hit a home run. He had 2 RBIs. Royals hosting Texas again tonight at 7:10 at the K in Kansas City. Sports is brought to you by Adam Kinser, Service Master of Columbia.com. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 6:08. John, thank you. Right now we have clear skies, 60 degrees. Traffic check, midmohires.com. Local companies are looking for local people. Midmohires.com. Find a job, post your job opening today. Road work is wrapped up on Highway 63, the driving lane and the shoulder, if you will, near Broadway. Many of you saw that work going on overnight. Quite a bit of work going on. They had some temporary lights set up. That has wrapped up for the day. We'll have another update at 6:31. Breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Hauswirth, 93.9 The Eagle.
Media Minute with Howard Kurtz.
There is just no question that most of the mainstream coverage of the reversal of Roe has framed it as an outrage and a betrayal. Linda Greenhouse, former Supreme Court reporter for the New York Times, calling the decision arrogant and saying the conservative justices have finished off the legitimacy of the court. Times columnist Pamela Paul says the country has become merciless and there is an American bent toward cruelty on abortion and guns and death penalty. CNN anchor Jake Tapper, focusing mainly on Donald Trump's unproven fraud charges, says he wonders whether the American experiment can succeed. Now, there's no question the High Court poured kerosene on a smoldering fire, spawning lots of litigation in the 50 states. Didn't have to do that. At the same time, there's a debate on the right about whether the pro-life movement, having gotten rid of this 50-year precedent, is going to support these babies that are born and their mothers who didn't want to give birth with social programs. We shall see. With your Media Minute, Howie Kurtz, Fox News.
So not Branden Rathert, but Stephanie Bell. Branden has the day off. I'm joined by Brian Hauswirth.
Good to see you. Good morning, Stephanie.
And producer Hannah.
Good morning.
So we are happy to be here with you this morning. We just heard a little bit about the abortion case. It was a heavy Monday. We spent a lot of time yesterday talking about abortion and the Supreme Court's decision, as my social media is full of reactions to that. Also a heavy day here in Missouri yesterday. Really a tragic accident yesterday. What about noontime?
Yeah, about 12:43 to be exact, Stephanie. And this area I know very well. Worked in radio for several years in Carrollton. Then I worked for several years, about 25 years apart about 20 years apart in Moberly. So I would come over to do a lot of games in Sheraton County, come over for various farm events. And unfortunately, we have seen several times over the years in this very county, Sheraton County, deadly train collisions, but nothing of this magnitude. This was an Amtrak train that was on its way from Los Angeles to Chicago. 200 plus people, different conflicting reports. Amtrak says 243 were on board. The Highway Patrol says 207. At least 3 dead. NTSB is sending a 14-person team to the scene. They should be arriving this morning.
Yeah, and I think we've got some audio from someone who was actually on the train during the crash.
Okay, well, we were in the dining car, and then you hear a loud noise, and we thought the train was just going to wobble a bit and keep going. But then it stopped and turned on its side. The people on our left-hand side flew across and hit us, and then we were standing on the windows on the right-hand side of the car.
And those are really the photos that I saw, was the train kind of laying on its side after the derailment. And it really is, it's terrifying, and it does carry a lot of people. I believe that's the same train. I was trying to look at the map, but I believe that's the same train that goes kind of through La Plata and then up through Chicago. Yes. And I know that's a train my sister's taken before. It's actually, we were planning a family trip to Chicago later this fall, and we thought, well, let's just drive up to La Plata and take the train. And now, I'm seriously having some second thoughts. I think this is the second derailment. Is it this week?
Yeah, yes. We've actually got a press release from an attorney who is, and I won't give the name of the law firm, but, basically suggesting that Amtrak has been, for lack of better terms, suggesting that they have not had a good safety record. And again, who knows what that is? Let's let the NTSB investigate. But your point is well taken, and that is, it is a scary situation, and we have right now a couple of hundred people who don't know how they're going to get up there. I mean, they are basically stranded. Now they're safe. They're at a school in Mendon. Many of them talk to our colleagues over at ABC 17, Eric McGuire, talked to them, but they don't know how they're going to get there right now. They're trying to figure that out. It is a scary situation. Congressman Graves is saying he's in close contact, Stephanie, with the Amtrak and the Federal Railroad Administration. But this investigation, as you know, I've dealt with plane crashes before, certainly something of this magnitude. It's going to take months at the minimum to do something like this, so we will wait and see. But at least 3 dead and a lot of people injured, and several of those have head injuries.
And many of them came here to
Yes, they
Columbia
did.
for health care, is that right?
That's right. Many of them were helicoptered, which tells you about the severity. That area, for people who don't know, and you know the area well from going to school in Kirksville, there's not a lot of hospitals there, and the ones that do are small. They don't have a lot of trauma units. So a couple of the patients went to Carroll County Hospital. A couple went to, I call it Hedrick Medical Center. I'm not sure if that's still the formal name up in Chillicothe. There's one other thing I think that's worth mentioning here, and I know this area well. Basically, and we had a couple calls yesterday when Dr. Tolber was on, and people were calling in about it. The patrol is saying this is an uncontrolled crossing on a gravel road, and we have to go by. I mean, they're there at the scene. But we had some another caller that says that there are lights there. But again, I'm going to go by what the highway patrol says. But we had 2 callers that said that train was traveling about 90 miles an hour. And then another one said it comes around a corner there. I'm a little baffled by the person saying it comes around the corner, because if you look at the television footage, and it's all over national press, the choppers, that appears to be a straightaway, unless it's just maybe coming up over a hill. But obviously it's just a terrible situation, and very, very active and difficult to even get to. It took first responders 19 minutes just to get to the scene, because it's just out in the middle, basically, of a remote area. It really is.
Sure, and we are getting texts this morning even from listener Chris saying it's not an uncontrolled intersection, that apparently there's a stop sign according to him. So I assume, that whether or not it's quote-unquote an uncontrolled intersection or how that intersection was managed will be part of the investigation that continues. It's
going to be part of the investigation, but I'll tell Chris and everyone else that are saying, we're going to go by what the Highway Patrol says. They are the official investigators, and but this is at least the 3rd listener questioning what the Highway Patrol is saying on that. But they're saying specifically, you heard the soundbite, quote, it's an uncontrolled crossbuck intersection at a gravel road, so no lights, no electronic control devices, things such as that. That comes from the man in charge of the investigation right now.
Okay, so do we expect to hear anything else this week, or you think it'll be a while before we hear anything regarding the cause and the investigation?
Very, very preliminary. I would tend to doubt it. The sheriff is probably going to defer on something like this to the Highway Patrol. It's possible. I think what we could do, I've reached out to Congressman Graves' office. I think if we hear anything, it might be from Congressman Graves, and maybe through our news partner at ABC 17. If NTSB decides to say something with Stephanie, I think whatever they say is going to be very, very basic. I think they're going to be very careful, just like the patrol was yesterday. And again, the reporters were pressing the patrol yesterday. I get it. They were doing their jobs, by the way, the reporters. Very good questions. But as the patrol said, these are preliminary. This is preliminary information. They were getting it from their people on the scene. So some of what we reported originally, quoting Amtrak, changed a little bit. For instance, apparently there were 207 people as opposed to 243. Things will change a little bit, but I don't expect much to be said because it's so early on in the investigation.
Sure. Well, of course, our thoughts and prayers are with everyone that was impacted. It sounds like a lot of people impacted by that derailment yesterday.
Yes, it was.
And again, just a heavy time, a lot of serious issues going on nationally. We've got, this train derailment in Missouri, but we're going to try to have a little bit of fun this morning. We've got a really, I'm excited about the show. We're going to be talking at 6:36 to our good friend Chris Arps about some of the Missouri stuff going on. We've got a new poll in the Senate race. We've got, and get his reaction to some of the media's reaction and politicians' reactions to the Dobbs decision. And I don't think people are really grasping, who aren't in the nerdy lawyer culture, grasping what a huge week it really has been for the Supreme Court. And so in the 7 o'clock hour, I've invited attorney John Reeves, who's going to be a first-time guest of the show. And he's filed some amicus briefs specifically in the case on guns. And I feel like here at Wake Up Columbia, that case kind of got overshadowed because it got decided Thursday, and then Dobbs got decided Friday. So we really haven't had a chance to break it down. And there's some interesting things that happened with the lawyers involved in that case after it was decided, after they had a big win. And John's going to be here to help us discuss all of that. And I think I saw an article. And then there was a third big, well, how many big cases can you have in 1 week? I guess yesterday might have been the fourth big case, because we had a really interesting religious liberties case last week, but we've got one that came out yesterday, and I think we've got some audio on that.
By a 6-3 vote, the Supreme Court landed firmly in favor of a former high school football coach who clashed with his school district after refusing to stop his post-game prayers on the field.
And so if you'll grant me a moment of personal privilege and nerdy personal privilege.
Granted.
I saw this article yesterday, and it said red flag June continues as Lemon is finally interred. And that's by Josh Blackman. He's a professor. I've seen him speak before. But in legalese, what happens is when the court, overrules a previous case and you're in the legal research system, it puts a red flag on that case saying, hey, you need to go check because the court said something different more recently. And he says not only, so for example, and this one probably will make a lot of sense to people, Dobbs red flagged Roe and Casey. And overturned Roe and Casey. Yesterday's decision about the high school football coach praying red flagged the Lemon test, which we will get into with John Reeves. And then there's been some other, the guns case. So we'll also get into Bruin with John Reeves, and that case red flagged this two-step test that the Supreme Court had previously put into place. So that is a lot of action and a lot of red flags in the court world, and I will try to keep it less nerdy. But I mean, a huge deal as far as court precedent, as far as how the courts decide. We already saw some state court action in relation to Dobbs yesterday, and so an exciting day on the show. We will be back here in a few minutes with your daily DC rundown. We're going to start with an update on the G7. You're listening to 93.9 The Eagle and Wake Up Columbia.
Here on the show, and probably YouTube, big into research. Okay, I hear about something, but let me check it out. Let me do my own research. And that's why I would encourage you to check out QC Kinetics when it comes to chronic joint pain, knees, hips, whatever it is that's hurting. You got to check out regenerative biologic solutions. No drugs, no steroids, no downtime. QC Kinetics. They can help you get your life back. And I know what it's like when you're dealing with pain that won't go away. Not only does it hurt, but then it starts affecting your psyche. You can't sleep. I know all that stuff. So research what they do at QC Kinetics, how they can help you. You can learn more by calling QC Kinetics 573-545-5588. If you have joint pain due to arthritis, lower back pain, you need to change the way you think about pain treatments, and then you need to research QC Kinetics. 573-545-5588. 573-545-5588.
Nothing the G7 or President Biden have done so far has stopped Putin in Ukraine. So they're all here in the Alps, putting their heads together, trying to come up with some other way to try to drain Russian bank accounts dry. And so far what they've come up with is a ban on Russian gold and also a cap on the cost of Russian oil.
That's Fox's Peter Ducey getting us into the daily DC rundown. That's the G7 update. Biden is concluding the G7 update and I think headed over to Spain for another meeting. And I have to give the guy credit, Hannah. Have you seen any major gaffes from Biden on the international stage this week?
No, and I'm kind of disappointed.
You think he's playing it safe after that fall on the bicycle?
Yeah.
Probably. It is nice to see that the world leaders are putting their heads together because something has to be done about Russia and Ukraine. But again, as Ducey pointed out, nothing they've done so far works. So we will see if if the latest proposals will move the needle on that. Also, yesterday, I guess the January 6th committee took everyone by surprise because they announced yesterday that suddenly they're having a meeting today at 1 o'clock.
Oh.
Isn't that the same committee that a couple weeks ago was like, oh, no, we can't go forward with our scheduled hearing because we have to do some more video editing and everything else. But then what did they do? Work all weekend and then yesterday be like, okay, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow.
They finally were able to pull it out of their butt, I guess.
So I think this will be the 6th hearing, but the Congress is about to go on the July 4th break, so everyone was expecting for the January 6th stuff to kind of take a long break, and they said, oh, no, before you go home, we've got one more thing. So that will begin this afternoon. At the same time, we've got tons of primaries going on today. I think I'm losing track. I think there's 7 states, including Colorado, Illinois, New York. Don't ask me what the rest of them are, but we will be recapping them tomorrow for you. Again, Trump's made some endorsements in the states. Everyone is still watching the effect of the Trump endorsement, but a lot happening today from a primary election perspective. At the same time, the HHS Secretary, Becerra, will hold an 11 a.m. press conference today to unveil an action plan, and that's in response to what Biden said about the Dobbs abortion ruling by the Supreme Court. And so I think it's already playing out in the courts. Louisiana and one other state, I think they went to court yesterday to try to enjoin the state laws. But now it looks like from the federal level, we might have some sort of announcement about what Biden plans to do about the decision. That is your daily DC rundown for today. We have Chris Arps coming up at 6:36. We will talk to him about the U.S. Senate race and the latest polling there. Also, a candidate that people have suggested might jump in.
If you're having a problem with ants, mosquitoes, or any other type of pest, don't worry because you have a friend in the pest control business, Steve's Pest Control. Find them online at stevespestcontrol.com and get your problem solved today.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. A city worker in San Antonio, Texas, finds dozens of migrants in the back of an 18-wheeler after hearing a cry for help.
We have processed approximately 46 bodies that have been triaged and tagged and declared deceased at this time.
San Antonio Fire Chief Charles Hood says 16 migrants are hospitalized. The police chief says 3 people have been taken into custody. The House Committee investigating the Capitol riot hears today from a former aide to former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows.
After a series of hearings over the past 2 weeks, no additional session was expected until after Congress returns from its Independence Day recess next month. The committee has not indicated what new evidence is being revealed. The committee has focused on what it says was a multi-pronged scheme by former President Trump to overturn the 2020 election results.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Today's hearing starts at 1 p.m. Eastern. America's listening to Fox News.
And now award-winning local news coverage with Brian Hauswirth on 93.9 The Eagle.
93.9 The Eagle News Time with Robinson's Cleaners. It is 6:31. Robinson saves you time. It is 60 degrees right now in Columbia. Partly sunny skies. 59 degrees in Jefferson City. Partly sunny today, our high 85 degrees. Good morning, I'm Brian Hauswirth. 3 people have been killed. A horrific collision between an Amtrak passenger train and a dump truck in rural Sheraton County. It's about 80 miles northwest of Columbia. It's near Swan Lake.
3 people are dead, dozens more injured as the rail cars tumbled off the tracks and landed on their sides. 2 of the people killed were on the train. 1 was in the truck. Hospitals reported receiving more than 40 patients after the derailment. Amtrak's Southwest chief was carrying about 200 passengers and crew when the collision happened near Menden at a rural intersection on a gravel road with no lights or crossing guards. John Marsh, Zimmer News Network.
John, thank you. Meantime, developers at the large Lakeside Ashland project say the video screen for their outdoor movie theater has been installed. They say it'll be a movie experience like no other. Lakeside Ashland is just west of Highway 63. They hope to open Labor Day weekend. They'll have a lake, a beach, 700-foot zip line, miniature golf. They're also leaving enough acreage for a 200-room hotel and conference center as well. And bond set at $50,000. A Columbia man charged with a bizarre robbery at the Hy-Vee gas station on West Broadway. 29-year-old Jacob Woods allegedly using a hammer and a large knife as he walked into the gas station. There were no injuries. He apparently put down $10 for gasoline as he was robbing the store. Columbia police say he was also seen driving carelessly throughout Columbia on Friday. That's in the court document. News brought to you by MidAmericaMortgage.us at 6:33. In sports, Cardinals beat the Marlins 9-0 last night at Busch Stadium. Juan Yepez hit 2 home runs. He had 5 RBIs in the game. Very impressive game for him. He continues to impress. Cardinal slugger Paul Goldschmidt, his 19th of the year. Uncle Charlie gets win number 6 on the year. His ERA's right around 3. Record should be better than 6-5. He just hasn't had a lot of run support at times. He is now 6-5, though. He gets the win. Game 2 of the series tonight. Dakota Hudson pitching for St. Louis. 6:45 first pitch right here on 93.9 The Eagles. Scott Warman with your pregame coverage on the Cardinals Baseball Network. Texas beat the Royals Monday at Kaufman 10-4. Ranger designated hitter Mitch Garver a home run in the game. Royals and Texas again tonight at the K7-10. KC 26-46, last place in the American League Central Division. Sports is brought to you this hour by MidAmericaMortgage.us. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 6:34. Traffic check, MidmoHires.com. Local companies are looking for local people. MidmoHires.com. Find a job. Post your job opening today. One thing we definitely have learned both from this and during our severe weather coverage, we've got a lot of listeners in Sheraton County. We appreciate that. We have many others that live there and come down here to work during the day. That's a very rural county. Agriculture is the common denominator in the county. Big thing right now, if you're in that area, there is still a huge presence of law enforcement, first responders, NTSB, equipment, construction. You've got the railroad companies as well. So if you're in those areas anywhere, Marceline, if you're in Brookfield listening to us, if you are in Salisbury, you're going to notice quite a bit of activity in that area, certainly the Menden area as well. We'll have more team coverage in less than 30 minutes. We have breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Hauswirth, 93.9 The Eagle.
I do not view abortion as a choice and a right. I think it's always a tragedy, and I think that it should be rare and safe. And I think we should be focusing on how to limit the number of abortions, and there ought to be able to have a common ground and consensus as to do that.
Joe Biden from
Wait a second.
Yeah, from 2006. His voice even sounds different. I wonder, if I will listen to my voice right now. Years from now and think, man, my voice has changed. I know when we listen to old cuts of Branden, I think his voice has changed. What about you, Chris Arps? Do you think your voice is going to change over time?
Well, I hope that I just sound coherent when I'm much more older. I think that's the stark difference between Joe and now. His voice sounds a little different, but he's making sense. He sounds coherent. He doesn't sound like he's searching for his words and doesn't know what he's going to say next. So I think that's the biggest difference that I've noticed in that tape.
And a pretty interesting take on abortion. That we spent a lot of time talking through that yesterday. I'm sure you on your radio show there in St. Louis and on all of the other programs you appear on, that's been, the topic of the day. Any specific reactions that have caught you off guard or that you think are particularly good or bad?
No, but I tell you, when I listen to the abortion proponents give their views on why abortion should be legal and all of that, it just seems to me that here's the argument, that in order for a woman to be equal with a man, she must have the right to murder her baby without the state or a man being able to stop it. That seems to be the main argument for abortion to some of these pro-life, pro-choice activists. And to throw it back on you for a second, Stephanie, I mean, am I wrong with that 30,000-foot view as a man, or what's your view?
Well, I'm extremely happy with how the court came out, and I think my view right now is simply that I think people are getting it wrong, and they're accusing the court of doing something that it didn't do, and that people aren't reading the actual opinion. And so I'm glad the Supreme Court basically said, hey, we're out of this game. Let's throw it back to the states. And if you have a differing view on abortion policy, then and to the people, then you can elect the representatives that will give you the types of policies on that issue that you want. And those are the folks that will ultimately make the decision. That we're not a court here to make political decisions. We're kicking that back to the political body. I think that's the right call.
And, I know I'm supposed to be the guest and you're asking me the questions, but I want to ask you another question because you are an attorney. The St. Louis County prosecutor has said that he will not enforce any abortion ban. And Missouri is one of the toughest states when it comes to abortion. We were the first one to outlaw it. How does that work?
That's a good question. I think that's going to be sorted out in the courts. And I think we've heard that from a lot of different jurisdictions. And I think people are still trying to grapple with, how that happens. But I think, I think it's all going to get sorted out in the courts.
Hopefully.
Now, but this the same prosecutor that's saying that he's going to jail people for some sort of graffiti or artwork?
Yeah, exactly. Apparently there was some racial graffiti that was written at Washington University. And at first this person was out on bail awaiting their trial, but he has reversed his decision and now wants this person jailed until their trial. Meanwhile, in matters of life and death, a Supreme Court decision that says that abortion should be sent back to the states and let them decide, true federalism, he says he's just going to ignore that ruling. Sounds like to me our prosecutor has his priorities misplaced.
I would say so. And I mean, St. Louis is known for, letting dangerous folks walk on the streets. And, don't get me wrong, racially motivated graffiti is horrible and should be punished, but they're going to jail that person and let some of these other folks just walk free?
Yeah. Well, Wesley Bell, along with Kim Gardner, the St. Louis City prosecutor, they are George Soros funded prosecutors. They are this new breed of prosecutors who believe that they're supposed to save the criminals from the police and that their job is not to put people in jail, but to be social workers. And because of those policies, we've seen crime spike up in St. Louis County. Of course, we've seen crime spike in St. Louis City. Look, I understand that they want to try a new approach to policing, but it's not working.
Well, and I know the governor, I think it was yesterday, signed a bill that's going to actually give additional funding over in Kansas City. And you remember that whole mess where they decided to defund the police like in the middle of the night over the weekend. And so I thought it was really quite hysterical that now, and good, right? But, they went to so many great lengths to try to defund the police. And now, and the folks and it was the people that came together and said, no, we cannot do this. We need more money for the police, not less. And now, with this sign of his pin, there is more money headed to Kansas City. I think, obviously I have my opinions about the need for police in St. Louis. But, I mean, you're right there in the thick of it.
Yeah, and even with all that going on, our Congresswoman Cori Bush is still saying that we should defund the police and put that money into social workers. Meanwhile, she has spent $300,000 plus of taxpayers' money for her own security. But, just as your typical liberal, do as we say, not as we do. I think Joe Biden has said he doesn't support defunding the police. Nancy Pelosi has said that. Their leadership has said that. But you have these fringe elements like Cori Bush and AOC that are still decrying that, and I think it's just going to be it's going to add to the disaster that it's going to face them in November.
Sure, even after their own party is telling them to be quiet. That's pretty amazing. Now, we haven't had a chance to talk with you since this latest U.S. Senate poll came out.
Yes.
I think it was late in the week, maybe even over the weekend. And it's showing that that Schmidt is actually up for the first time. Now, a lot of folks are saying, well, it's a Remington poll and there's ties to his advisors, and so it can't be trusted. But what poll can be trusted, really? What are your thoughts on the poll?
Well, I think is what a lot of us were believing anyway, that the closer we get to the August primary, that these polls were going to tighten up a little bit. There has been a third-party group that is running ads in St. Louis and Kansas City, I believe, that are not exactly favorable to the former governor, Eric Greitens. I said when we were on a couple of weeks ago that it's about in the 7th or 8th inning here in the Senate primary, and if some of these candidates are going to make the move to try to contrast themselves with Eric Greitens, this is the time to do it, and we see that. Today on the show in St. Louis, we have Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler that's going to be on the show. We had last week Mark McCloskey, Eric Schmidt on the show as well. So they're starting to make the rounds, except for one particular candidate. I know you guys have had Eric Greitens on several times, right?
No.
No?
No. He's been kind of hard to get a hold of.
Yeah, he's doing the 30,000-foot campaigning thing and campaigning through TV ads, which is going to be a very interesting strategy to see can he keep his 27% and pull this thing out.
And one take I'm seeing, I mean, is it too little too late for some of these other candidates and for the negative ads and everything else? I think here in Boone County and in some places, people are already voting. I think you can already go in and request your absentee ballot. So some people, by the time they hear, one negative ad, have already voted. Is it too late?
I think you're going to have some people that, of course, are going to vote early, absentee voting and all of that. But I think still, if these contrast ads, negative ads are effective and really bring out some of the negative things about Eric Greitens and his custody trial and some of the things from his ex-wife, if those get into commercials and the public knows more about that, I think that could definitely still affect the race.
I do think, I think last time you were with us, we were talking about there's talk of putting an independent in the Senate race, and that might shake things up, right? And I think the talk was Danforth was going to support a gentleman, I think his name is John Wood. Are you familiar with this individual?
Yeah, John Wood, is the cousin of former Senator Christopher Bond. He was the U.S. attorney on the western side of the state, I think around 2006. 2007, there was a little controversy about that because Todd Graves' brother was the U.S. attorney at the time, and it was talk that Bond's office helped engineer his removal to put his cousin in the race. We had Senator Jim Talon on yesterday on the show, and I asked him about a potential third-party candidate that Senator Danforth is supporting. And though he said he is friends with Jack and doesn't have a problem with him personally or anything like that, he just didn't think this was a good idea, that what's going to end up happening is you're going to split the Republican vote in November, and that could make it possible for Trudy Bush Valentine to become the next U.S. Senator, that we need to really coalesce around a strong candidate after August 8th, whoever that may be, and support them so we can keep this seat red, and hopefully will help us take over the Senate.
So, I had known a little bit of the history from John Wood. The thing that surprised me, I didn't know this. He was serving on the January 6th committee. That was his job.
Yeah. A lot of people didn't know that until that article came out, and of course he abruptly resigned from that committee for some strange reason. Probably that doesn't look good to be on a committee that a lot of people feel is castigating former President Trump. So he quietly and abruptly resigned from that, but that's still going to be on his resume.
Right.
And, I don't think that's going to enhance him with a lot of Republican voters.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to choose the rhino hunter guy or the guy serving on the 1-6 committee? Or, I think those ads write themselves. Even if you resign, I had no idea that he was the counsel for the January 6th committee. And I just think, if you're out there looking for a candidate that can be middle of the road, and split the Republican vote, I don't know that this guy, I don't think this guy is it.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And, Jack Danforth has made no secret that he's not a fan of Eric Greitens or Josh Hawley anymore, even though he encouraged him to get into the race. A lot of people feel that Jack Danforth is a middle-of-the-road, old-school Republican who was in office at a time when Democrats had overwhelming majorities in the House and Senate, and so that style of Republican was more of a get-along and go-along type of Republican, actually trying to get things done. And a lot of people believe that's that same way now with choosing this John Woods to possibly split the Republican vote in November.
All right. Well, if you can hang out with us for a little bit longer, I know you've got some news on this New York Supreme Court and non-citizen voting. I need to hear more about that.
Let's do it.
You dump it, they pump it. I'm talking about Pro Pumping and Hydrojetting. They do the real hard work. And I want to tell you about this. When it comes to servicing, emptying out lagoons and septic tanks, people over the past few years, they've started to realize, oh, yeah, it's Pro Pumping and Hydrojetting here in mid-Missouri. And now might be a really good time to think about that because it's been warm. Haven't had a whole lot of rain. So it makes it easier for them to get a lot of their equipment to your place without ruining your yard and things like that. But I'll tell you what, they send me pictures all the time of some of the places they get into. It's just remarkable what they do. And I think that's important because the length, the extra length, that extra effort, they make sure that you're happy. That extra length they go through to make sure you're happy and satisfied. Pro Pumping and Hydrojetting, pro-pumping.com. You dump it, they pump it.
Welcome into Wake Up Columbia. Stephanie Bell sitting in for Branden Rathert this morning, who has the day off. We've also got producer Hannah here, and of course, our good friend Chris Arps is joining us. Chris, there was a big win.
Stephanie, you're supposed to say he's on assignment.
He is. Oh, he is on assignment. Are you? Sometimes you are. You're out there collecting signatures. You're running campaigns. You're hanging out with Trump.
Brandon's on assignment.
Oh, Brandon's on assignment. Yeah. He's on assignment taking a nap, right? Hopefully
exactly.
I hope he's sleeping in and getting some good rest and doing all of the things that he deserves. But yeah, you've been on assignment, though, all over the place lately, but you've been watching this New York stuff really closely. And big win yesterday in the New York Supreme Court, apparently.
Big time win. You know, a few months ago, the city of New York, their city council approved a measure to allow non-citizens, those with green cards that are in the country legally or in the city legally, to be able to vote in municipal elections, which is absolutely crazy. They automatically gave 800,000 people who were non-citizens the right to vote. And here's probably the most crazy thing about it, Stephanie, is you only had to be a resident of the city for 30 days prior to the election, and you could be registered to vote. One thing that was really ironic that, in China, they don't have a lot of rights over there. People can't vote. But automatically 400,000 Chinese nationals would have been given the vote in New York City if this law would have been upheld and passed. And thankfully, some sanity did prevail in New York City, and their Supreme Court said that this is illegal, and it has been thrown out.
And they're not the only city that allows this, though, right?
Oh, there are cities that are all over the country that are doing this. In Chicago, recently they allowed their non-citizens to vote in their school board elections. There are the Los Angeles and San Francisco. They allow non-citizens to vote in school board and mayoral elections. This is a growing movement that is happening all around the country, not just in blue states and in blue cities. There was a city in Georgia a few years ago that was also trying to pass non-citizen voting. Look, we're happy that people want to come to the country. We're happy that they're paying taxes and are participating within the system. But if you want to be a full participant in society and vote, you should become a citizen first. I think that only makes sense.
Well, and I was interested to see that this was struck down under the state constitution. So I'm thinking about these other cities and how they might go about challenging and using this case to try to challenge those provisions in their own cities. But a lot of it's going to come down to the state constitution. And I think some of these other big ticket items that we've been talking about are going to come down to your own state constitution. So, people like to talk about the U.S. Constitution, but every once in a while it's that state constitution that really matters. So I, as somebody who's a huge fan of state constitutional law, I am glad to see that. But 800,000 potential votes, that's insane. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but we had people tie right on the nose for city council here in in the city of Columbia. I mean, exactly the same number of votes. And then you look at like Dr. Oz, what was that? That was millions of votes separated by a couple thousand. So, I mean, that's 800,000 is, a potential difference maker, right?
And 30 days before the election, not 6 months, 90 days, or 30 days, you could just move into New York City, register to vote, and you can have a voice in city elections. And that's why my organization, Americans for Citizen Voting, that's what we aim to do, is to change state constitutions to say that only United States citizens can vote. Once it's enshrined in the state constitution, it's done.
Thanks for your important work.
Done.
Always happy to talk with you, Chris Arps. Have a good day. You're listening to 93.9 The Eagle.
One of the jobs that I had while going through school for several years, and I had the job for a while because I loved it so much, was doing lawn maintenance. This was for a landscaping company, and here's one of the things I loved about it. Pay was pretty good. Got to be outside all the time. This holds true today with Salter Lawn Service. Salter, one call does it all, and I especially want to turn you on to what's happening at Salter. Jobs starting at up to $20 an hour. And we say jobs, okay, maybe you know someone, hey, I'm looking for work. Direct them to Salter Lawn Service. But this is also a career opportunity. There is room for advancement at Salter Lawn Service. Great benefits, paid time off, all that stuff. So it's not just, it doesn't have to be just a summertime job collecting a paycheck. It's collecting experience, it's collecting character, and you're helping out local folks by beautifying their lawn and their land. So check out the job openings at Salter Lawn Service. Salter, one call does it all.
It was just too hot. I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News.
We're not supposed to open up a truck and see stacks of bodies in there.
But San Antonio, Texas Fire Chief Charles Hood says they found 46 migrants dead, crammed inside an 18-wheeler with no water or air conditioning. 16 survivors are hospitalized, 4 of them kids.
We hope that those responsible for putting these people in such humane conditions are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Mayor Ron Nirenberg, 3 people in custody. It's what believed to be a human smuggling operation. About 40 people are recovering in Missouri the day after being injured when the Amtrak train they were on slammed into a dump truck on the tracks at a rural crossing. 3 others were killed. The train derailed.
Then it stopped and turned on its side. The people on our left-hand side flew across and hit us, and then we were standing on the windows on the right-hand side of the car.
The NTSB is sending a crew to investigate what happened and why. The Democrat-led House Committee probing last year's Capitol riot has another hearing today.
The Select Committee is hearing from Cassidy Hutchinson this afternoon at a hearing announced only yesterday. Hutchinson was a top aide to former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. In recorded depositions, Hutchinson told investigators several House Republicans inquired about pardons in the aftermath of the January 6th riot.
Fox's Jared Halpern, days after the Supreme Court undid the federal legal right to an abortion, giving states rights to restrict it, judges in Louisiana and Utah have allowed abortions to continue there for now.
Abortion providers in Louisiana argued that the ban was overly vague and restricts the right to due process. In Utah's lawsuit, Planned Parenthood and the ACLU wrote that 55 patients were scheduled for abortions in the next week. Similar lawsuits have been filed in Texas, Idaho, Kentucky, and Mississippi regarding trigger laws.
Fox's Alexandria Hoff. Those laws were put in place in the past to ban abortion if and when the Supreme Court rules, like it did Friday. America's listening to Fox News.
This is it, your last chance to win the new $15 million prize of a lifetime from Publishers Clearinghouse. Today is the last day to enter to win $15 million on June 30th, so you must enter at PCH.com before it's too late. $15 million, all for you. But time is running out, so enter now at PCH.com. The $15 million prize of a lifetime. Don't miss your last chance to win it this June 30th. Final day to enter at PCH.com. Entries due 6/28, no purchase necessary. Prize paid at least $390,000 annually, void or prohibited.
When you're an innovative business, every blinking cursor is an opportunity. What will you do with it? Will you make something better or create something new? Our Dell Technologies advisors provide you with expertise and tools with Windows 11 to do incredible things. Because we believe there's an innovator in all of us. To do more with a Latitude laptop, Dell Technologies recommends Windows 11 Pro for business. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL.
93.9 The Eagle News Time with Robinson's Cleaners. It is 7:03, and Robinson saves you time. Partly sunny at 62 degrees here in Columbia, 61 in Jefferson City. We're expecting a nice day today. A little bit warmer. It'll be sunny with a high of 85 degrees. No precipitation, and the weather should be pretty good for our first responders and the NTSB when they arrive here in a few hours up in Menden. Good at the scene of the train derailment. Good morning, everyone. I'm Brian Hauswirth. Here's some of the stories we are working on for you. At this hour, we begin with that train derailment. A broadcast report, actually two of them, say the uncontrolled crossing that was the scene of Monday's deadly collision between an Amtrak train and a dump truck is on a statewide list for needed safety improvements. Our colleague ABC 17's Lucas Geisler breaking that story yesterday evening, citing state records. KMBC in Kansas City also reviewing those records, reporting that as well. Missouri State Highway Patrol Lieutenant Eric Brown says the crossing in Sheraton County is on a gravel road. It's near Porsche Prairie Avenue.
It's an uncontrolled crossbuck intersection on a gravel road, so no lights, no electronic control devices, things such as that.
Patrol describes their investigation as active and ongoing. The collision has killed 3. It has injured dozens of others. Again, the NTSB is on their way to that scene as we speak. They're bringing a 14-person team. They are expected to arrive sometime this morning. A northern Missouri congressman who is the ranking Republican on the House Transportation Committee on Capitol Hill is thanking first responders from across the state who quickly responded to the deadly train derailment. Many of those first responders were here in the Columbia area. Helicopters sent up there to transport patients back to Columbia. Menden is Congressman Sam Graves' rural district, where rail and farming have a large presence in many of the counties, including Sheraton. Congressman Graves says he's keeping in close contact with NTSB, Amtrak, and also the Federal Railroad Administration. Funeral services are set for this morning here in Columbia for former Columbia College president Dr. Gerald Bruder, who died last week at the age of 79. He served as Columbia College's president from 1995 until 2013. Columbia College political science professor Dr. Terry Smith, who served as the executive vice president under Dr. Bruder, noted his theme was "We respect teaching and we respect learning."
We want to provide our students wherever they are, and they were literally all over the world, with the very best education possible, and also reach out to students who are underserved.
He praises Dr. Bruder. He says Dr. Bruder, in every sense of the term, was a legend. He said he helped create the college's graduate programs in 1996 and is responsible for the successful forensic science program there at Columbia College. People know it from all over the country. Funeral services begin this morning, 10 o'clock. Columbia's Our Lady of Lourdes Church, which is on Bernadette. Lakeside Ashland developers say the project will be the ultimate eat, play, and stay destination. Project is being built west of Highway 63. The video screen for the outdoor movie theater has now been installed. Developers say the screen is elevated, that everyone will have a good view. Project developer Nick Parks says that theater will be Mid-Missouri's best place to watch a movie or a concert. It will also include a restaurant, beach, a 700-foot zip line. Many people in Ashland also excited about the large miniature golf course that is being planned in that area, a beach and a lake planned as well. And also, they're making enough acreage for a 200-room hotel. And a Columbia man accused of robbing the Hy-Vee gas station on West Broadway while carrying a hammer has waived arraignment and pleaded not guilty. 29-year-old Jacob Woods is charged with first-degree robbery and armed criminal action for Friday morning's robbery. It happened just before noon. Bizarre robbery. He actually put $10 down as he was robbing the store. That's according to the court documents. Woods allegedly had a large knife as well that one customer said looked like a sword. Court documents quoting Woods is telling the clerk at the counter, quote, "Do you know what a man with a hammer and a knife can do?" End of quote. And the court documents also say that Woods was seen driving carelessly all throughout Columbia on Friday. Bond set at $50,000. He's been banned. He can't go anywhere near a Hy-Vee at this time. News is brought to you in the 7 o'clock hour by the folks at the Candy Factory in downtown Columbia. The Candy Factory is downtown. TheCandyFactoryOnline.com. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 7:07. In sports, the Cardinals beat the Miami Marlins Monday night at Busch Stadium 9-0. Paul Goldschmidt What a shot that was in the game. Big Mac Land actually hit the sign. I think it hit the fry sign, if I'm not mistaken. Ball was hit so hard it came back down onto the field. That is as high as it can get. The ball looked like it was still elevating. He was impressive. Yepes, 2 home runs as well, 5 RBIs. Uncle Charlie gets win number 6 on the year. He's 6-5, game 2 of the series tonight. Dakota Hudson is pitching for St. Louis. 6:45 first pitch right here on 93.9 The Eagle. Rangers beat the Royals Monday at Kauffman Stadium 10-4. The designated hitter for the Rangers, Mitch Garver, had a home run, 2 RBIs. Royals in Texas again tonight, 7:10 at the K. Royals continue to struggle overall. They're 26-46, last place in the American League Central Division. Our sports on the Eagle is brought to you this hour by Missouri Heart Center, moheartcenter.com. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 7:08. All right, John, thank you. Great work this morning on television as well. Partly sunny, 63. It is 7:09. Traffic check, midmohires.com. Our roads are pretty quiet here in mid-Missouri. We'll have more team coverage in less than 30 minutes and breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Hauswirth, the 93.9 The Eagle.
We also had a great victory in the United States Supreme Court for supporters of a thing called the Second Amendment. I told you when I started my campaign that I will protect the Second Amendment, and nobody has protected it like me. And I especially want to commend the justices for standing strong in the face of outrageous threats and even violence.
Big win last week for the Second Amendment and those interested in constitutional law, Second Amendment rights. And one of those folks I want to bring into the show, John Reeves with Reeves Law. He's based in St. Louis. I think we first met when you were working as a younger attorney at the Attorney General's office. And now appellate law is really your specialty. And I just have to imagine the last week has been like every day waking up like Christmas morning for you.
Yeah. Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, that is an understatement to say the least. It really, the last few days have been what I can only describe as the golden age of golden ages for the American conservative legal movement in this country. There really is no other time period to compare it with. First, with the Bruen case, which I know we'll talk about in a moment with the Second Amendment, then with Dobbs overruling Roe v. Wade, and then yesterday with the Kentucky case overruling the Lemon test, allowing the coach to pray as a private individual while he's on the job. This really is, the last few days has been the culmination of 50 years of long, hard work by the conservative legal movement, by groups like the Federal Society. There is no comparison to what's happened in the last few days. Where you're on the conservative side, it's always sometimes an uphill battle, but we've won so much. It's almost like, what do we do now? I say that tongue in cheek. There's still a lot of work to do, but it's an unusual but very enjoyable position for us, for conservative lawyers to be in.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can't overstate the importance of the last week. And I know, you like to go to the Federal Society Convention, and I imagine there will be a big celebration there in some of these issues and wins. It's just a monumental shift in where we were headed and where, for our future. And so, I'm really excited, but I know folks like you are really excited. You filed some amicus briefs in this Bruen case. It was decided last Thursday, but I really feel like it's kind of sad because it's gotten overshadowed by Dobbs. And so for people who are, really in that Second Amendment lane, I don't think it's gotten quite the recognition that it deserves. So can you, give us just the Cliff Notes version of what happened there?
Gladly, yes. I agree with you. It was unfortunately overshadowed by Dobbs. I think Dobbs was the one case that could have overshadowed it. So what they decided in Bruen. So let me give you some background, a quick refresher on Second Amendment law. As most people who carry a gun in Missouri know, in 2009, the U.S. Supreme Court decided the Heller case, which for the first time ever said you have a Second Amendment right to own a gun in a firearm in your home for self-defense. They reaffirmed that a few years later in the McDonald case. Now, in Heller, the court bent over backwards. This was a Scalia opinion to point out that they were only deciding whether the Second Amendment protected your right to own a gun for self-defense in the home, because that was the law at issue. There was a D.C. law that explicitly prohibited people from owning a gun in the home. And Heller explicitly said, we do not now decide whether or to what extent the Second Amendment right to self-defense also applies to carrying a gun outside the home. Bruen answers that question that says, yes, you do have a right to carry a gun for self-defense outside the home. And this is actually the first Second Amendment case that the Supreme Court has taken up since the Heller and McDonald cases in 2009 and I think it was 2012 for McDonald, respectively. And there's been a huge division in the courts of appeals below in the years since those first two cases were decided. And frankly, Stephanie, it's only because of Justice Barrett's confirmation at the tail end of the Trump administration that the court was finally able to take this case. Before Justice Ginsburg died, there were a couple of cases like this Bruen case in the pipeline that people were asking the court to take to resolve this issue. Can you carry a gun outside the home for self-defense? And the court held on to the cases in terms of whether they would decide to take the cases or not for an unusually long time. And most commentators agreed the reason the court couldn't decide whether to take the cases was because of the Chief Justice. I don't need to remind your listeners how, a lot of people have been disappointed in him and being a bit, so concerned about the perception of the court among the liberal elite that he's basically failed to do his job. But basically for a long time before Justice Barrett got on the court, I think people like Justice Thomas and Justice Alito and even Justice Gorsuch were concerned that the Chief Justice would not be a reliable vote on this. So it was only after Justice Barrett was confirmed that they took this case. And thankfully, I must say, the Chief Justice, he signed on to the majority. But anyway, so just to give you I don't want to go on too long because those are supposed to be short.
Yeah, no, I mean, so just a long time coming, a lot of steps. People had tried this before. It finally gets up before the court, and a really thoughtful opinion by Justice Thomas. And I think it was his birthday, too, on the day that this was issued.
It was.
Yeah, so an exciting day for those supporting the Second Amendment. But what happens next? I mean, the federal government just passed this law that, purports to, provide additional measures related to guns. Also, Missouri's got their SAPA law that's kind of tied up in court. So is there any, what's next for the Second Amendment specifically here in Missouri?
Yeah. Here in Missouri, that's a good question. I don't, honestly, at this point, I don't know. The opinion is made very clear, and Kavanaugh issued a concurring opinion making clear that, yes, you have a right to carry a gun outside the home. That does not mean that the states can't impose certain licensing requirements on there as long as you shall be able to carry the gun if you meet the licensing requirements. My personal view of the matter, glad to get the opinion, is that at a bare minimum, Bruin requires every state to have what was Missouri's old concealed carry law. That, we have constitutional carry now, which you don't even need a permit for that, as I understand it. But at a bare minimum, every state has to basically do what we had with the concealed carry. That if you satisfy, you've gone through this minimum training, you've met all the other requirements, which are non-political, they have to issue a gun then. They can't deny issuing you a gun just because, you don't really need it because of defense. So that's my general view of the matter.
Well, and
go ahead, please.
Well,
go
and
ahead.
this case, so there's a lot to come on the Second Amendment, and I think what it means in the specific states, but it meant something pretty remarkable for the attorneys involved in the case. And I think, or have met these attorneys, and they're, big time SCOTUS lawyers. And there was some drama in the legal world this weekend following that case.
Yes, it was drama that was, I can't say it was unprecedented because the same thing happened to these same attorneys about 10 years ago. The two attorneys in question who won in Bruin are Paul Clement and Aaron Murphy, now formerly of Kirkland Ellis. They are both quite simply two of the best, if not the best, appellate lawyers in the country. Paul Clement, for your viewers, for your listeners, if you may not know who he is the premier Second Amendment lawyer basically today, and he unsuccessfully argued the Obamacare case. He lost. That wasn't his fault. But the day that the Bruin decision came out, the big law firm he and Aaron were at, Kirkland and Ellis, told them you can no longer handle Second Amendment cases, and if you want to, you have to leave the firm. So Paul and Aaron said, fine, we're leaving the firm. They didn't even bat an eye. They left. They set up their own private practice now. And the same thing actually had happened to Paul about 10 years ago when he was defending the Defense of Marriage Act on behalf of the House of Representatives during the whole marriage debates, where the big firm he was at the time, King and Spalding, said, we can't defend this. He said, fine, I'm leaving and I'm forming my own firm. So this is the second time around. But the key thing is that Paul stuck and Aaron both stuck to their beliefs. And I've met both of them. They're outstanding lawyers. So it is scary, quite frankly, Stephanie, that big law has become like this. This is one of the reasons I'm a solo.
Yeah, we talk about corporations going woke, but I guess law firms aren't immune from going woke either. And so they're basically saying if you represent someone who disagrees with our firm political beliefs, then you're out. Is that?
Yeah. And quite frankly, Stephanie, this is really stupid and short-sighted on the part of Kirkland and Ellis, the firm that fired Paul, because he attracts the top talent. There's so many future conservative lawyers who are clerking on the Supreme Court of the United States or who are in the Federal Society who would basically give half of their teeth, so to say, to work for Paul Clement. None of them are going to have any respect for Kirkland and Ellis now. And frankly, I think it's really short-sighted on their part, especially you see there's been some pushback against wokeness on the part of Governor DeSantis against Disney in Florida, and that's worked a bit. And I just think that there's going to be a similar pushback here. I just really think it's really short-sighted on their part. So. Yeah.
Sure. And I was glad to see Paul Clement also, say something like, as a lawyer, I have a duty to my client. And there are other issues going on in the Second Amendment space that, I need to see through. And so, I'm going to stick with my duty to my client rather than, whatever kind of loyalty I had to this firm, which, the firm wasn't treating him, I don't think, in the best way. So.
And that's another issue that he touched on. I'm glad you mentioned, Steffi. I mean, as lawyers, we all have an ethical duty of loyalty to our clients. That comes first. And we don't have time to discuss this, but that's part of the bigger problem, too, of how big law firms are. Law isn't like another business. You have to do what's best for the client, even if that may not be in you as the lawyer's best financial interest. So it's just really neat to see someone like him sticking up for for this. And he's going to be fine no matter what. But he always was going to be. But it's really inspiring for other lawyers who might otherwise feel intimidated, in my opinion.
Sure. Well, I'm glad to see him sticking to his principles, and I have so many friends in this space, including you, and people who have been working on these types of issues for years and years and years, and thinking about you all. Waking up every morning, like Christmas morning for the last week, has made me wake up with a smile. So thank you so much for joining us, John. Next term, I'm hoping that we can have you back on about the next big conservative legal movement win.
I would love to, Stephanie. Happy to be on any time. And thanks for having me.
Hey, next we've got coming up, What's Hot with Hannah? Do we have a fun question or a cute photo today, Hannah?
Well, I wouldn't say it's cute, but it's a photo.
Okay. That's coming up at 7:23. You're listening to 93.9 The Eagle. Stephanie Bell in for Branden Rathert and pulling a Branden Rathert because it's 7:25-ish, which means
it's 7:28.
And it's time for What's Hot with Hannah.
Man, you couldn't be any earlier than 7:28.
I tried.
Ouch. So basically what you're saying is it's not just a Branden problem. It's a show problem.
I'm learning from him, so I'm still going to blame it on him.
There you go. I will accept that excuse.
Okay.
I have posted on the Wake Up Columbia Facebook page a picture. And Steph, before the break, you asked me if it was a cute picture. And it is not a cute picture.
Ooh, is it? Should I be worried about what kind of pictures you're posting on the Facebook page?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
But it is a picture of a dog whose name is Mr. Happy Face.
Aww.
And he was just named the 2022 World's Ugliest Dog.
Oh, that's so mean.
Bless his little heart. He is a 17-year-old mutt, and basically it looks like the only hair that he has on his body is like on his head and face.
Ew.
And he's one of those little senior dogs that can't keep his tongue in his mouth. And to be honest, if you didn't tell me that this was a dog, I might have thought it was a bat.
A bat. That's how ugly the dog is.
Yeah, poor little guy. So every year they do the World's Ugliest Dog show. And it's basically around the same time as the, world famous Westminster dog show. So it's like 1 week you have, the best in show, and then the next week you have maybe the worst in show. Poor guy.
What kind of pet owner enters their dog into the ugliest dog and admits they have the ugliest dog? Hopefully there's like a cash prize or something.
Yashonda on the Wake Up Columbia Facebook page says it's a face only a mama could love.
Aw. Well, Brian Hauswirth will join us in just a minute with the latest on the train derailment and your news. You're listening to 93.9 The Eagle.
If you have a problem with ants, mosquitoes, or any other type of pest, don't worry. You have a friend in the pest control business, Steve's Pest Control. Check them out online at stevespestcontrol.com.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. Dozens of migrants are found in an 18-wheeler abandoned on a remote road in San Antonio, Texas.
At least 46 migrants were found dead after a city worker in San Antonio reportedly heard a cry for help. 16 individuals were found alive and taken to the hospital. 3 people have been arrested in the presumed smuggling attempt. How long those people sat there trapped in the scorching heat is still unknown right now.
Fox's Alexandria Hoff. Ghislaine Maxwell is sentenced in federal court in New York City today for the sex trafficking of girls for financier Jeffrey Epstein.
Prosecutors are pushing for up to 55 years in prison, saying she played an instrumental role in the horrific sexual abuse of multiple young teenage girls. Maxwell has denied abusing anyone, her lawyers asking for no more than 5 years. Epstein killing himself in 2019 while awaiting trial on similar charges.
Fox's Kristen Goodwin. America's listening to Fox News.
And now award-winning local news coverage with Brian Hauswirth on 93.9 The Eagle.
93.9 The Eagle News is brought to you this hour by Robinson's Cleaners. Robinson saves you time. Our time is 7:31, 66 degrees. It is sunny right now in Columbia with a high today of around 85. Clear tonight, low near 62. And tomorrow, a little bit warmer. We'll be up in the 90s tomorrow, 91 degrees. Good morning. I'm Brian Hauswirth. Here's some of the stories we are working on in this 7 o'clock hour. State troopers say 3 people have been killed, dozens more injured in Monday's horrific collision between an Amtrak train and a dump truck near northern Missouri's Minden. That's in Sheraton County, about 80 miles northwest of Columbia, a very remote area. A lot of farms in that area. Missouri State Highway Patrol Corporal Justin Dunn tells reporters that the collision happened Monday afternoon at about 12:43 p.m.
Preliminary investigation indicates an Amtrak passenger train traveling to Chicago, Illinois, struck a dump truck. at the railroad crossing of Porsche Prairie Avenue. It's an uncontrolled crossing.
Dunn says 3 fatalities involved 2 victims on the train, 1 in the dump truck. Their names have not been released. NTSB is on their way to the scene right now as we speak. Much more on this story, my updated story at 939theeagle.com. Meantime, developers at the large Lakeside Ashland project say the video screen for their outdoor movie theater has been installed. They say it'll be a movie experience like no other. Lakeside Ashland is just west of 63. They hope to open Labor Day weekend. They'll have miniature golf, 700-foot zip line, Lake Beach as well. Dr. Gerald Bruder's funeral, 10 o'clock this morning at Our Lady of Lourdes. And the Jeff City News Tribune reporting, Boys and Girls Club will expand a $1.2 million facility in the capital city. News brought to you by Willett Dental Associates. In sports, at 7:33, the Cardinals beat the Miami Marlins last night at Busch Stadium 9-0. Cardinal designated hitter Juan Yepes hit 2 home runs, had 5 RBIs in the game. Cardinal slugger Paul Goldschmidt, his 19th home run of the season. Adam Wainwright earning his 6th win of the year. He's now 6-5. Game 2 of the series is tonight. Hudson on the mound, the Cardinals and the Marlins. And, of course, we'll have the game for you right here on 93.9. The Eagles, 6:45 first pitch. Rangers beat the Royals Monday at Kauffman Stadium 10-4. DH Mitch Garver had a home run for the Rangers. Royals hosting Texas again tonight, 7-10. KC 26-46. On the year. Our sports is also brought to you this hour by WillettDentalAssociates.com. Make an appointment now, 573-445-5300. WillettDentalAssociates.com. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 7:34. Traffic check, MidmoHires.com. Local companies are looking for local people. MidmoHires.com. Find a job, post your job opening today. Our roads are pretty quiet in mid-Missouri. If you want to report a traffic issue, you can give us a call or a text. We're always happy to hear from you. We appreciate all the great information. Great calls yesterday during Dr. Tobler as well. For those of you who live in Sheraton County, we appreciate the great information about that railroad crossing. Very helpful up the Mendon area. 573-874-9390 is that number you can call or text. More team coverage in less than 30 minutes. Breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Hauswirth, 93.9 The Eagle.
Okay, well, we were in the dining car, and then you hear a loud noise, and we thought the train was just going to wobble a bit and keep going. But then it stopped and turned on its side. The people on our left-hand side flew across and hit us, and then we were standing on the windows on the right-hand side of the car.
Just a terrifying turn of events, that from someone who was in the train, in the club car. I've sat in those club cars, eating a snack, on my slow journey across, over to, usually I ride it to Kansas City. I've ridden it to St. Louis, but this train was up a little bit north. I think it's the one that kind of goes through La Plata and then up through Chicago. And in fact, my family had plans to take that same route from La Plata over to Chicago this fall in September, I think. And just a tragic turn of events yesterday about noontime. And what's the latest, Brian? Yeah, Stephanie, and you're exactly right. That is the line. It's basically, from Amtrak's perspective, it's a line that starts in a route that starts from Los Angeles, ends up in Chicago. 12:43, the exact time yesterday when the 911 call came in. And first responders responded immediately. It took them 19 minutes to get there, and that's because it was just out in, literally, it's just a very, very remote area. I know that area very well. Very hard to get to. The roads are gravel, very hard to get to. But the new information is NTSB is on their way to the scene. They expect to arrive sometime this morning. It's a 14-person team. Obviously, we don't have an exact time. It's a very active scene right now, based on all the reports. And I think the other angle of this story is Congressman Sam Graves. He's ranking Republican on the Transportation Committee,
and he's in touch with the Federal Railroad Administration. He's also in touch with NTSB, but FRA, I call it, Federal Railroad Administration. They may have something to say about this. I'm sure they will, but they're probably going to defer originally to the NTSB. This thing could take some time, but the patrol is saying that their initial report is that this is an uncontrolled crossing, that there were no lights. We've had at least 2 or 3, if not 4 listeners that one is saying they agree with that, but 3 of them are saying they're not sure that's correct, that they believe that it is a lighted intersection. But again, this is coming from the patrol and the sheriff and everyone else. So there are areas that are close to that. Now, a couple of other listeners have said that a lot of people use this crossing to get to Swan Lake. That's a very popular area. For people who don't know, a lot of people go up there to hunt. I'm not sure this time of the year you go up there. I normally would hear about people going up there in the fall. But yeah, I know people do go up there to birding and things like that. But that's the status right now. Very active scene. And we have probably anywhere from 100 and, well, ballpark 150 people who essentially are stranded right now. Amtrak trying to figure out how they're going to get them to their destination. At least they're safe. The community is feeding them. They gave them a place to stay. Some being put in hotels, many at the school. But just a sad situation overall, and fatalities. And that soundbite you played was very powerful, because what could have happened, as she described that, they could have, as that thing was turning over, they could have gone through those windows and been crushed.
Sure.
And there's no, I mean, that is just absolutely horrible. So 3 people injured, but a lot of the people who were hurt have head injuries.
And many of them were flown here to Columbia,
Yes.
I believe, for health care. One of the things I saw on social media yesterday was I'm friends with a local pastor who's up there, and he was putting out messages because happened to be pretty close, and said, look, don't come. Like, there are already a lot of people on the scene. We know that you want to help. And so apparently there were so many people showing up in the area to offer assistance and help. He was saying there's too many people, here now. We will let you know when we know more and when we know what you can do. But at this time, and so I know it seemed like, not that he was frustrated, but just trying to clarify information. But my thought, of just the people in that community and others nearby, rushing to that area to try to help, I thought, really exemplifies, mid-Missouri and
right.
rural America too. So.
No, that's a great point, Stephanie, that you're not going to hear probably on national outlets, but it's absolutely true. Very generous. It's one of the poorest counties in northern Missouri. I mean, the child poverty rate up there, I hate to think of what it is now. Goodness gracious, when I worked in Moberly, it was high. Those children those families are very poor. There's very little industry up there, but they help each other out, and they were feeding. I know that they were taking food to the people that were that were stuck, and they're scared too. Those people, the people that were from Los Angeles and some from Kansas City and elsewhere as well. But yes, many people came out, and they had enough food. But your point is very well taken, and just highlights the generosity of the folks, because they don't have a whole lot themselves.
Well, and that's the second derailment here as of late. I forget where the other one.
Montana was the other one.
Montana,
yeah.
and I think too, it's frustrating for me. I mean, obviously it's sad and tragic, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the folks who lost their loved ones and who are injured, and those who are stranded, and those who are going to have to deal with having gone through that. But right now, I mean, the gas prices and everything are so high that I feel like, the train is a cheaper way for many people to travel, especially long distances or folks without cars. And so it should be, a safe place that we can rely on in times of need, especially with as much money as the government spends on trains. And so to see that happen yesterday, with knowing that folks probably right now have an increased reliance on public transportation, and we need to be able to, trust those methods. It's especially tragic. So.
It is that train, based on callers yesterday that were calling into Randy. Randy had me on for a little bit, and I'm not surprised. I don't have an exact number, but I've seen them drive through there very fast. They said that those trains come by about 90 miles an hour. So I'm not saying the train was going 90 miles an hour, but I wouldn't be surprised it'd be in that range. And the freight trains don't quite go through as fast. There's some turns and things like that. But the track it's Burlington, northern Santa Fe, and basically Amtrak. I'm not sure if they rent the line, use it, borrow, however that works out. But it's actually a Burlington Northern Santa Fe line. But we have had, when I worked in Carrollton, when I worked in Moberly, I covered in both cases several deadly collisions between trains and cars. But usually it was one person being killed, and they were all horrible. All those were horrible crashes that I covered, but never anything like this. In fact, I don't remember this I think it's called the Chief. I don't remember that coming through. It definitely wasn't going through there in the 90s. Maybe that's something that's fairly maybe in the last 20 years. But this is the biggest one I've heard about as far as happening in that area, and hence when NTSB is sending a 14-person team to a scene, I think that tells you something.
It's serious. And, the news has been heavy lately. We spent most of yesterday talking about abortion and these serious Supreme Court decisions, and then to have this happen yesterday. I was looking and flipping through the news yesterday thinking, is there any good news out there? What can we talk about that, is a little bit lighter? And I saw a story and it made me smile and gave me a giggle. And I think when I relayed it to you, Brian, you thought, yep, I've heard this story and it's really good. The News Tribune was reporting Judge Mary Rhodes Russell will be the Chief Justice of the Missouri Supreme Court coming up in 2023. They go on rotating terms. And so they kind of highlighted her background and some of her I don't know whether they're escapades while she was the last Chief Justice, but I like to put it in that it's a fun story. And I think and knowing, having heard her speak and interacting with her in various organizations and watching kind of her career, it made me smile. And, I feel like especially the federal justices have been, as of late getting so much hate. And I think it overshadows the important work of the judiciary and how much those folks really care about, those seeking justice in the state and care about the institution. And so she said her last time as Chief Justice, she did what she called undercover judge work. And she would go to the courthouses dressed as a regular resident and sit on the benches and listen to people talk about their experiences. She said she'd, ask, why they were there, what they were doing there, and then, did you know how to get into the courthouse? Do you understand what the judge is saying? Try to pay attention to. Are they listening? Do they feel like they're getting a fair opportunity? And she said she kind of came up with that idea after watching, the Undercover Boss TV shows. And I thought that's so, and having been on the state's highest court, she said, I don't get to go into the Boone County courthouse, the local courthouses every day. And so she had been was feeling removed from that, and thought, I need this information to do my job in the best way I can. And so she played undercover boss. She did. That's a great story. Jeff Haldeman reporting that, and that's certainly correct. I do remember when she did that. She probably can't do that in Boone or Cole. She's too well known. People would recognize her. Certainly the judges would all recognize her, the court personnel, and a lot of the people, because she's been around a long time. But outside of those two counties, she'd be able to do that. But boy, she's been around a long time, very humble. One thing I know about her is she listens, and she is someone who is huge work ethic. There's no doubt about that, and always says hi. Seen her many times over the years at grocery stores or when I'm in Jeff City. Run into her a lot at Madison's. And she's just very, very, very polite. She's been there, I want to say 96. Does that sound right? When she came in, it's been a while. She's coming up here before too long. In the next probably 5 years, she's going to be coming up for retirement. But a huge, that will be a big one to replace. But yeah, I enjoyed reading that article because I do remember her doing that. And she was able to take that information, process it, and then make some recommendations. Well, and I thought you would particularly like a fact that she shared. Now, she said she grew up in Hannibal, and her dad was a dairy farmer. Her mother, she says, was a housewife. And so the whole article is just, hey, dream big. I never thought I would sit on the Supreme Court. And she talks about her first job. And she said her first internship was with the Hannibal Courier-Post, and her beat was the local courthouse. And that's first how she got familiar with court processes and procedures doctors and lawyers and judges. And she said, someone once asked her what was her, before she went to school, what was her favorite job? And she said, hands down, being a reporter.
Yep.
And I thought that was really great.
And I think it shows if you're meticulous on your legal stuff as well. When you read her rulings or decisions, formally it's called a decision, or a dissent, it's just it's enjoyable to read. I love actually all of them have they all have their own different styles, but she's really big about quoting specifically certain statutes. Could be some case in 1865 or maybe some case in 1911, but she does her homework, and they're enjoyable to read. There's no doubt about that. She puts a lot of preparation in it, and very interesting. Had she not been a lawyer, she probably would have been a fine reporter. There's no doubt about it. But there's not a whole. As I told her one time, not a whole lot of money in reporting. I remember saying that many years ago.
Well, we're going to keep it lighthearted in the 8 o'clock hour. Coming up about 8:10, we'll be joined by Chad Carden. If you haven't ever heard him speak, he's won national awards for consulting with businesses and other folks, founder of the Carden Group. And, all of our city governments are saying, in order to attract and retain employees, we just need more money. What if you're a small business owner and more money, you don't have the tax dollars to just throw money at people? What are our options for recruiting and retaining some of the highest level employees? He's going to help us with that. And coming up, there's that movie where that little kid sees dead people, but can you talk to dead people? One company is saying maybe you can.
When you start a new job, normally you have to wait for all those awesome benefits you get to kick in. Not at Hitachi Energy. They value all their employees, even the new ones, which is why pay starts at $21 to $25 an hour with a $3,000 phased signing bonus and benefits day one. Hitachi Energy not only inspires the world, you inspire them. Apply today in Jefferson City or online, hitachienergy.com/careers. Inspire your future, inspire the next. Hitachi Energy. They're inspiring the next workforce to power the world, and it all starts with their facility. It's climate controlled for all seasons, which means it's always comfortable in there. Not every place can say that. Let Hitachi inspire the next step in your career. Hitachi Energy's pay starts at $21 an hour. Benefits starting day one. Apply today in Jefferson City or online, hitachienergy.com/careers. Inspire your future, inspire the next. Hitachi Energy.
This is not Branden Rathert. This is Stephanie
Thank
Bell.
God.
It's a takeover. A producer, Hannah, and Stephanie Bell and Brian Hauswirth takeover of Wake Up Columbia. Branden will be back with us tomorrow. We've had lots of you just saying hey, and he's getting a much-deserved day off. So we're excited to give you the Stephanie and Hannah show for today. And we're trying to bring you some lighthearted news because it has been a heavy couple weeks. And I listened to a couple of shows and they name their segments. And if this segment had a name, it would be Tech Things That Freak Me Out.
Wow, what a catchy name, Steph.
Right? And you know me, I love technology. You're Gen Z, so you love it more than I do. It's like attached to your hand at all times, right? And I do love my technology. I've said I love my Alexas. I have those at home. But sometimes I feel like they go just a little bit far. And so I know Instagram has taken a lot of heat lately about users who are too young. And I saw an article yesterday that not only are they going to start asking you to, enter your birthday, which you could very clearly lie, like,
oh yeah, easily.
Right. And I'm sure people have done that for years, but they're going to have some sort of facial recognition as part of, or they're trying to get it, facial recognition that they could scan your face and there would be certain things to tell them how old you are. And they could judge your age by your picture.
Okay, I'm going to call BS on that because I have always looked way older than I actually am, so I totally would have been able to get away with this when I was younger. That's not...
And people guess my age younger, but also you can do things to make yourself look younger. And there's those filters, right? And they're like filters on Instagram and TikTok where they try to say like how old you are. So I know it's been kind of out there, but the fact that it's going to be used or potentially used to verify your ability to get on a platform, I think is kind of wild.
Yeah, I use Face ID to unlock my iPhone and have never really thought anything of it. But if it were to try to tell me how old I was, I think I would probably, A, not like the answer, but B, I don't feel like that would be very reliable.
Or like, your watch sometimes is like, your heart rate's kind of high. What if it scanned your face and was like, are you feeling okay? You're a little flushed today, Hannah.
Ouch.
I know. I feel judged when it's like, it's time to stand up. I'm like, leave me alone. I'm tired. But I think we're headed in that direction. And I missed the movie title earlier. The little kid who says, I see dead people. It's The Sixth Sense. I looked it up. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. But Amazon is training Alexas to imitate voices of real people, including dead people.
Nope.
So not only can you, hear the voice of Alexa, and you can change her too. I think you can get a man Alexa and you can change her name and there's all sorts of things, but they're saying after just you can play a recording, so after just a minute of her listening to someone else, she can now imitate their voice.
See, that creeps me out a little bit, especially when you add in the part where you could continue to talk to like your dead family member. That's weird to me.
But is it a good thing? So Hallmark used to sell those books that had like the recorder in it. And my parents, when my kids were really little, we had them, all the grandparents record them reading the story. We have Christmas ones and other ones, and they're really sentimental. I love that. But what at this Amazon show, they were saying the clip showed a boy asking Alexa to read him The Wizard of Oz in the voice of his grandmother, and she was basically able to do it in a softer voice.
Crazy.
I don't know. Coming up after the break, we will have Chad Carden, founder of the Carden Group, on what you can do to retain and attract the best employees.
Were they victims of human smuggling? I'm Dave Anthony, Fox News.
A worker who works in one of the buildings up here behind me heard a cry for help.
San Antonio Police Chief William McManus says that cry was coming from an 18-wheeler crammed with migrants. Fox's Evan Brown says they found a lot of bodies among the survivors.
46 were pronounced dead. More than a dozen, including children, were suffering from heat exhaustion and dehydration, says Fire Chief Charles Hood.
No signs of water in the vehicle. It was a refrigerated tractor trailer, but there was no visible working AC unit on that rig.
3 people are in custody. The NTSB is sending a crew to Missouri to investigate why an Amtrak train slammed into a dump truck at a rural crossing with no flashing lights.
8 cars derailed, throwing the passengers all around as it slid to a stop in the culvert. Those passengers then broke out windows and helped each other up and out, grateful to be alive. But not everyone survived. 3 people total died, the driver of the dump truck and 2 passengers. 50 people were also hurt, with some going to the hospital for treatment.
Matt Stewart with Fox 4 TV in Mendon, Missouri. The House committee led by Democrats investigating last year's Capitol riot has another hearing this afternoon. A former aide to then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows will testify. President Biden is on his way to Spain for NATO talks after leading the G7 summit of world leaders in the Alps. Aboard Air Force One with him, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said,
"Obviously, Ukraine will be top of mind. Russia's ongoing brutality, most recently on display with this gruesome and horrific attack on the shopping center yesterday."
That attack left 18 people dead. A boat is washed ashore in the Azores Islands with no sign of the North Carolina man last seen on it 7 months ago. 2,700 miles from where Joseph Johnson went missing on a fishing trip. Johnson's mother still praying he'll be found in a miraculous rescue. America's listening to Fox News.
This is it. Your last chance to win the new $15 million prize of a lifetime from Publishers Clearinghouse. Today is the last day to enter to win $15 million on June 30th. So you must enter at PCH.com before it's too late. $15 million, all for you. But time is running out, so enter now at PCH.com. The $15 million prize of a lifetime. Don't miss your last chance to win it this June 30th. Final day to enter at PCH.com. Entries due 6/28. No purchase necessary. Prize paid at least $390,000 annually. Void or prohibited.
When you're an innovative business, every blinking cursor is an opportunity. What will you do with it? Will you make something better or create something new? Our Dell Technologies advisors provide you with expertise and tools with Windows 11 to do incredible things. Because we believe there's an innovator in all of us. To do more with a Latitude laptop, Dell Technologies recommends Windows 11 Pro for business. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL.
93.9 The Eagle News with Robinson's Cleaners. It is 8:03 and Robinson saves you time. Beautiful morning in mid-Missouri. Sunny, 68 our current temperature. We're expecting a high today of around 85 degrees. It's currently 70 right now in Jefferson City. Good morning. I'm Brian Hauswirth. Here's some of the stories we are working on for you. On this Tuesday morning, 3 people have been killed after a horrific collision between an Amtrak train and a dump truck. It happened near Mendon, about 80 miles northwest of Columbia.
3 people are dead, dozens more injured as the rail cars tumbled off the tracks and landed on their sides. 2 of the people killed were on the train. 1 was in the truck. Hospitals reported receiving more than 40 patients after the derailment. Amtrak's Southwest chief was carrying about 200 passengers and crew when the collision happened near Mendon at a rural intersection on a gravel road with no lights or crossing guards. John Marsh, Zimmer, News Network.
Meantime, a northern Missouri congressman who's the ranking Republican on the House Transportation Committee is thankful for the first responders from across the state who quickly responded to the train derailment. Many of those were from mid-Missouri, many from North Missouri as well. MU Healthcare, Boone Hospital, just to name a few. They sent helicopters to that area. Mendon is in Congressman Sam Graves' rural district. Rail and farming have a large presence in many counties, Sheraton especially. Congressman Graves is in close touch with the NTSB and the Federal Railroad Administration. Lakeside Ashland developers are saying that the project, which is being built west of Highway 63, will be the ultimate eat, play, and stay destination.
Lakeside Ashland is being built west of Highway 63, south of Columbia. The large video screen for the outdoor movie theater has now been installed. Developers say the screen is elevated and that everyone will have a good view. Project developer Nick Parks has said the theater will be Mid-Missouri's best place to watch a movie or concert. The project will also include a restaurant and a 700-foot zip line. It will also include a beach and miniature golf. Don Luzader, Zimmer News Network.
Don, thank you. They're also building enough acreage for a 200-room hotel and also a conference center right there in Ashland. And a Columbia man has waived arraignment. He's accused of robbing the Hy-Vee gas station on West Broadway while carrying a hammer and also a large knife on him. He's waived arraignment, pleaded not guilty. 29-year-old Jacob Woods is charged with first-degree robbery and armed criminal action for the incident on Friday. It happened just before noon. Woods allegedly had a large knife as well as a knife that one customer said looked like a sword. Now, according to the court documents, it was a bizarre robbery. Woods apparently threw $10 down on the table for gasoline as he was robbing the store. That according to the court documents. Our news is brought to you by the Callaway Bank. The Callaway Bank, they're with you for the moments that matter. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 8:06. In sports, the Cardinals beat the Miami Marlins Monday night at Busch Stadium 9-0. Cardinal designated hitter Juan Yepes, 2 home runs in the game, 5 RBIs. Goldschmidt, a massive home run, 19th homer of the season. ESPN has been showing that all night, that shot off the Big Mac. I think it hit the fry sign, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it hit the fry sign. It hit so hard it came back down on the field. Adam Wainwright earns his 6th win of the year. He's 6-5. Dakota Hudson on the mound tonight, game 2 of the series. 6:45, first pitch right here on 93.9 The Eagles. Scotty Warman, your pregame coverage in the Cardinals Baseball Network before that. Rangers beat the Royals Monday at Kauffman 10-4. The Royals in Texas again tonight, 7-10 in Kansas City. Sports is brought to you by Steve's Pest Control. Steve's Pest Control can handle mosquitoes. Mosquitoes can be unpleasant, annoying, and potentially dangerous. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 8:07. All right, John, thank you. Partly sunny skies right now, 69. Traffic check, MidmoHires.com. Local companies are looking for local people. MidmoHires.com. Find a job, post your job opening today. Our roads are pretty quiet in mid-Missouri. If you want to report a traffic issue, you can give us a call or a text, 573-874-9390. More team coverage in less than 30 minutes, and we have breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Hauswirth, 93.9 The Eagle.
Not Branden Rathert, but Stephanie Bell here with Brian Hauswirth and producer Hannah. Branden has the day off. I do like to nerd out over all of the recent SCOTUS rulings. I don't get super, angry or like really fired up, but lately something has really made me frustrated. And we talked 3 weeks ago-ish about Columbia City Council raising pay rates for city employees. And I agree that there are a lot of people out there in public service who probably deserve a little bit more money. But we're talking across the board pay raises. The state did it earlier this year. And just this weekend, there was an article about how the Jefferson City City Council was going to talk about pay raises last night. And as someone who grew up in small business, as someone who's in a small business, who has a husband in a small business, who are also competing with these folks who have buckets of taxpayer dollars and can't always just give offer a pay raise, right. I'm thinking, what are my options to try to compete against these folks? And then B, are they wasting my money by just doling out pay raises and not addressing some of the other things within the organization? that might be able to attract those employees. That's not just money, because throwing money at the problem is not always the answer. So I was feeling very fired up about this one day and frustrated as a taxpayer, and I happened to come across a social media post by someone who I've seen speak before and who's won lots of awards, who consults nationwide on businesses, and has a long list of very accomplished clients. And his post said, of course, fair compensation is a strong factor, but in reality, it comes down to these 3 areas. So I'm happy to welcome, for the first time to Wake Up Columbia, Chad Carden, who is the founder of the Carden Group. Welcome, Chad.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, so tell me about these 3 keys to retention. I'm sure you've been hearing it from those folks that you consult. What do I do to keep, not only to keep my employees, but attract new ones?
Yeah, listen, I appreciate the time. I could bore you to death for hours on it, but I know we don't have that much time. I really believe, just to kind of start this off, that 80% plus of people challenges inside organizations are self-inflicted. I believe that, you have to be really intentional and focused on strong working relationships. How do you create stronger, not friendships? If your friend's great, but how do you create strong working relationships that allow you to truly not just work together, but work together, that set you up for success in driving the results that you're looking to drive? How do you create stronger engagement? So how do you get to know your people, understand your people, understand how they want to grow, what ways they feel they contribute, what are some of their goals, and how can you tie all of that into the overall floodlight viewpoint of where the small business or organization is going? Because when you connect them and they understand how what they do impacts not only them, but the business, there's create more engagement. And then fulfillment. How do you create what we call opportunity mindset, where people are doing things that they believe mentally they're saying, I get to, versus minimizing the obligation mindset of, I have to. There's a big difference when people approach things and I get to do these things versus I have to do these things. And if you do that, you begin to create an environment that people love coming to. And when people love coming to it, again, money is a factor, absolutely, but it's not the only factor. And so when you can create that environment that people enjoy, they understand how what they do matters, they see themselves growing, and there's a strong working relationship where there's trust, respect, and rapport with each other, you have an environment that sets you up for a higher probability of success of not only retaining certain people, but attracting people to that environment, because, the studies show that 7 out of 10 people don't necessarily love coming to work. And so there's a huge opportunity for organizations that really get this right to separate themselves and create something that is, a unique value proposition.
So that was the post I saw. 3 things you said: relationships, engagement, and fulfillment. Do you have a success story that you could share? Maybe one concrete example of something someone's doing that really made a difference in their organization?
Yeah, so we have several clients, as you mentioned, and we're growing because this is a very hot topic right now. But one of our clients, and so to do this, you need true commitment. It's like anything else, right? I mean, people say that they focus on their people, but a lot of times they focus on the results. That's why I think that 80% of this is self-inflicted. And so you have to get really intentional about where you have the commitment and the follow-up and the buy-in from the people at the top, because it has to be top-down driven, but then it has to be bottom-up implemented. And so we work with public and private entities all the time. There's actually a manufacturer here in Jefferson City that we've done some work with, and their leaders committed to creating those 3 factors by creating more clarity around what are the goals, what are the expectations, creating alignment around that. We always say, where's the bus going? So if wherever the bus is going, are we clear on it? Right? Do people understand it, and do they agree with it? And then do they understand their purpose? And so we've been working with an organization here in Jefferson City for over 2.5 years. It takes commitment, it takes time, but once you can change that narrative and help people see that, you really begin to see retention efforts go up, recruiting efforts go up. We work with a local hospital here in town. We work with a lot of state departments. The Department of Corrections is one that Ann Precythe, she's the director. She's been on this train for over 5 years. She came in and took over a department that was challenged, still is challenged, but now Missouri is one of the kind of flagships across the state, or across the country, that have actually opened up more opportunities for us to work with other states, corrections departments as well. So again, there's a lot of different ones, but it does take commitment from the top. It's an infinite game that you play with people. Unfortunately, the X factor will never completely understand them, But if you really put intent behind it and really get your people in tune with it, that creates an even better organization.
So we are talking with Chad Carden of the Carden Group, who USA Today recently named one of the top coaches making a difference in careers, personal lives, and more. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian Hauswirth, who actually used to be with Corrections.
Yeah, I did, and that's good information, Chad. Yes, I did, and you're right. That department was challenged when Director Precythe came in, and she's trying to do the best she can. She's also dealt with a pandemic too, which is no other DOC director had to deal with that. So. Point well taken. I want to ask a question kind of tying in with Stephanie. I'm not going to ask you about a policy position on what the Jeff City Council is taking up, but just in general, Stephanie pointed out that what they were looking at, so just in general, was a 5% across-the-board pay raise, very similar to the state, very similar to, let's say, Boone County. You know, some say that's a good idea, that everybody gets a raise, but I've also heard people complain. And they say, well, I get the same amount of, I work hard, I'm here all the time, but I get the same amount as somebody that just sits on their butt. And I've heard they say it a little differently than that. What's your take on that?
Listen, I without getting too far down in the weeds, I think that it's a short-term solution. And I think short-term shortcuts create long-term headaches. I think that ultimately it's a Band-Aid. I do believe that it will give them a bump. It's almost like kind of a false high, but eventually people get comfortable in the pool you swim in. And so, you get to that point and there's always, kind of what's next. It also impacts, as you mentioned, if you don't address the other issues or the other variables in that equation, you do. In an organization, you have builders, you have maintainers, and you have departers, right? Your builders are your strong go-to every day. They're going to give you 110% effort. You have an adverse impact on those builders sometimes because they do look and say, why am I working so hard? And so you could potentially, go the other way where you begin to change the mentality of builders and maybe builders move into the maintainers or even departers. And so you can ultimately, it's almost like you get this uptick, but eventually there's, in my opinion, if you don't address the totality of it, there's a law of diminishing returns.
Now, you said you worked with both public and private entities. In your work with, do you see a difference there? Is there, what are there different motivations? Are there different, ways to retain and recruit and attract talent? That, specifically, I think we have a lot of folks who are, on the private side, small business owners, that they can take advantage of.
Well, I think the people game is what we found kind of across the board. I think it's about, if you look at small businesses today, it's how can we be really intentional about focusing on what we kind of deem our internal brand, right? A lot of small businesses, and they should be focused on the results and the external brand and the markets that they serve, which they very well should. But that we believe that if you can get the internal brand right, the people side of that equation right, it makes it easier, not easy, nothing's really easy in this world today, but it makes it easier to impact the external brand and the results that you're looking to impact. And so that comes down to, how can you look at your people? And as a small business owner, I think leverage, it should be a word that people focus on every single day. And you can only really leverage three things. You can leverage your money, your people, and your time. And so when you focus on people and putting them in what we call energy-driven activities or opportunity mindsets, and where they're really best suited to impact the business, and you put everybody in the right, the puzzle pieces in the right place, that's when you begin to get the picture that looks like the picture on the box, if you will. And so it truly comes down to minimizing the noise. There is so much noise and so much confusion and frustration. Is how do we get really intentional in spotlighting with our people about what is their role, what is their purpose, and how can they stay really intentional and focused on those things that impact themselves and the business overall.
Well, and I
know that's a lot. Maybe it's confusing, but
no. And I think, I really liked this three-part, these groups that you kind of set out earlier. You said there are builders, maintainers, and departers. And I think as someone who's kind of type A and wants to go and always improve and grow, I get frustrated when I'm in an organization and I look around and I'm like, why the status quo? Like, we could do better. And I'm constantly pushing. And I know those folks who are like, look, we're everything's going great. We're just trying to get things done and trying to, maintain, are frustrated with me that I'm always trying to change up the game. So I think your perspective is that you have to have both. Is that right in an organization? And then what's the breakdown of like how many, builders you want versus maintainers?
Well, I think those three groups are always going to show up. I think maintainers are your people that are going to punch in and punch out and do really, really good work for you, but they're not necessarily where they're willing to, take extra risk, do extra things. You need those people to kind of pull the levers and make the machine go. But you also need the builders to keep the vision, keep the excitement, what's next, the new ideas, the trial and errors, the pilot testing. You need those types of people. There's a good blend of that. I don't know if there's necessarily a percentage, Stephanie, but ultimately, I think what's really important is that business owners understand who falls into what bucket and then how to leverage those buckets. Because you being a builder, again, I could frustrate you because I keep going to the well and keep going to you and keep going to you, and you're looking up there and you're going, well, what's Chad doing? Why is Chad sitting in the corner over there? And so ultimately, I could have an adverse impact there. With my maintainers, ultimately I want them to fall into, and hopefully they grow into builders. But my goal is just to make sure that we have some steady eddies in the organization, that they don't necessarily get discouraged, frustrated, confused, and then fall into the departer category. I think where a lot of people miss it, and again, it's self-inflicted, is we focus too much on departers. Right? And the departers, we either have to help out or help out of the organization, which I know scares the heck out of businesses today because they just want people. But ultimately, if you have a bunch of departers on the bus that are causing, sidebar conversations and causing dissension and getting people to think about different things, ultimately you're going to infect, the whole bus, the whole organization. And that's not a good thing either. And so you have to address them. But too many times we spend too much time on the departers trying to get them where they need to go. And ultimately, there just might be another bus for these people. And they might not be bad people. They just might be, there's another bus for them.
I love that take, and we've been looking at this article, Hannah and I, about what does it say? It's on Fox. Want job success? Quit gossiping at work. And I think your point is that there are some folks that aren't going to see maybe success at your organization, maybe aren't a good fit. Gossiping probably is one of those things where maybe it's just best that they move along to somewhere else and then focus on the folks that are really there. And you're right. I mean, what a hard decision to make as an employer in today's time. One last question before we let you go. I wanted to get your take on how important is, as far as recruiting and retaining employees, is remote work or flexibility, specifically here in mid-Missouri, with not being as affected with the pandemic as many other areas. I feel like a lot of people are back to normal, saying, hey, we're all in the office. But are you seeing that that's an important factor for employers being able to hold on to folks?
Yeah, I think it's some of our clients in mid-Missouri and around the Midwest are challenged with that right now because now, with the remote game, I mean, a New York firm, somebody in Australia, anywhere across the globe can kind of poach some of these people and give them something that they might be looking for. I think that is it's interesting. I think it's an ongoing conversation that organizations are trying to figure out. Sometimes they make a decision, well, we're going to go all remote, and then, that doesn't work. And then we're going to bring everybody back in the office, and that doesn't work. We're going to do a hybrid approach. That doesn't work. I really believe right now it's a lab, and there's not a one size fits all. I believe the organizations have to find out what's the right formula, what's the right mix that works for our organization, that sets our organization, our people up for success, and realizing there might be 4 or 5 different versions before we figure it out. I think the key there is a shared experience with your people. And what I mean by that is, and this is kind of spotlight on the remote work versus the in-office, but also kind of the totality viewpoint. What I mean by shared experience is keeping your people informed along the way. There's no sense hiding this stuff behind the curtain. If you don't really understand it and you're not figuring it out, just raise your hand and say, we're figuring this out together, right? This is brand new. There was no playbook before the pandemic about all this. We're really figuring this out together. And then also give your people a voice. So help your people understand. I hear the music. Help your people understand that they have a voice in this, and that we're all in this together. So when we come out with the formula, everybody feels like their hands in the middle and they're saying, go team.
Whether you're public or private sector, such good insights. Thanks for helping give us some tips, especially as I've been frustrated hearing about these across the board pay increases. I really enjoy your social media feed. For those of you looking, it's thecardengroup.com. Thanks so much, Chad.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Branden Rathert. This might seem a little odd, but you know me by now, right? Okay, so you have a relationship with a family doctor. They take care of your body and all that good stuff. And now for about 4 or 5 years, I have had a relationship, my car has at least, with Gap's Automotive Repair Shop. And I'll tell you what's been key in that. So Gap's Automotive Repair Shop, they're in Columbia and they're in Boonville. Small local company. Usually it's the same mechanics, been there for a while. And that means it's the exact same mechanics that have been working on my car for several years now. That's important. I get it. You can go in, look on the computer. Oh, here's what we did last time. But I got to tell you, I like this idea that it's usually the same people that have continued to work on my car at Gap's Automotive Repair Shop. 140,000 miles, that thing runs smooth. I hope that you will consider starting a relationship with you, your vehicle, and Gap's Automotive Repair Shop in Columbia and in Boonville.
Stephanie Bell in for Branden Rathert. We have the morning bell. We'll get right to it. We're running a bit behind, but Chick-fil-A.
Oh, no.
I know. Chick-fil-A is outdoing us all. Apparently, you can order on the mobile app, and they've got an express drive-thru. I think they just chuck the food in your window as you drive past, I'm pretty sure. But it's an interesting concept. Chick-fil-A has never done me wrong, and I think they should be in charge of more things, frankly.
If you're having a problem with ants, mosquitoes, or any other type of pest, don't worry because you have a friend in the pest control business, Steve's Pest Control. Check them out online, stevespestcontrol.com.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. The House committee investigating the Capitol riot hears today from former top White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson. A hearing called, we're told, because of recently obtained evidence.
Congress has left Washington for a 2-week Independence Day recess. The panel had said earlier that there would be no more hearings until July. A spokesman for the panel looking into the Capitol Hill riot of January 6, 2021, declined to comment on the recent revelations that have prompted this latest hearing.
Fox's Karen McHugh. The bodies of 46 migrants are found, with 16 people alive in an 18-wheeler in San Antonio, Texas.
Officials say those surviving migrants were hot to the touch and dehydrated when hospitalized yesterday. The horrifying scene was discovered by a San Antonio city worker after hearing cries for help. Homeland Security is leading the investigation into what is a suspected human smuggling operation.
Fox's Jackie Ibanez. Police say 3 people are in custody. America's listening to Fox News.
And now award-winning local news coverage with Brian Hauswirth on 93.9 The Eagle.
93.9 The Eagle News Time with Robinson's Cleaners. It is 8:31. Robinson saves you time. 70 degrees here in Columbia, 69 degrees in Jefferson City. We're expecting a high today of around 85 degrees. Good morning. I'm Brian Hauswirth. Here are some of the stories we are working on for you in this 8 o'clock hour. State troopers say 3 people have been killed, dozens more injured. Monday afternoon's horrific collision between an Amtrak train and a dump truck near northern Missouri's Mendon. Names of the victims have not been released as of yet. Investigation continues. Mendon is about 80 miles northwest of Columbia. Missouri State Highway Patrol Corporal Justin Dunn tells reporters the 2 of the victims were on the train. One of the victims killed was in a dump truck. Again, NTSB is on their way to the scene right now as we speak. They'll investigate that derailment. Longtime Columbia College president Dr. Gerald Bruder will be laid to rest here in a few hours in Columbia. 79-year-old Bruder died last week at the age of 79. An arraignment yesterday for a man accused of robbing a Columbia gas station.
29-year-old Jacob Woods is charged with first-degree robbery and armed criminal action for Friday morning's robbery in Columbia, which happened just before noon. Woods allegedly had a large knife as well that one customer said looked like a sword. Court documents quote Woods as telling the clerk, "Do you know what a man with a hammer and a knife can do?" Woods has waived arraignment and pleaded not guilty. His bond is set at $50,000. Don Luzader, Zimmer News Network.
And Boys and Girls Club, Capital City expanding a $1.2 million facility, according to the News Tribune. News brought to you by Hemi Construction. Our news time, 8:33. In sports, Cardinals beat the Miami Marlins last night at Busch Stadium. 9-0 was the final in the game. Cardinal designated hitter Juan Yepes hitting 2 home runs. He had 5 RBIs. Cardinal slugger Paul Goldschmidt, 19 homers on the year now. He had a big one last night. Wainwright gets the win. Game 2 of the series is tonight. Cardinals just half a game back behind Milwaukee in the National League Central Division. It's been very tight. Seems like it's been that way for a couple of weeks right now. Cardinals need to keep winning and hopefully can get back out in front, but they're a half game off the lead right now. Rangers beat the Royals 10-4 Monday at Kauffman Stadium. They play again tonight, 7-10. Kansas City 26-46 in last place in the American League Central Division. Sports is brought to you in this 8 o'clock hour by Tiger Towing. When you can't get going, Tiger Towing, 573-449-3754. 93.9 The Eagle News Time, 8:34. Traffic check, midmohires.com. Local companies are looking for local people. Midmohires.com. Find a job, post your job opening today. Our roads are quiet in mid-Missouri. If you want to report a traffic issue, 573-874-9390. More team coverage in less than 30 minutes, and we have breaking news immediately. I'm Brian Hauswirth, 93.9 The Eagle.
This is Stephanie Bell sitting in for Branden Rathert, who has the day off. We are joined by Brian Hauswirth.
It's good to see you. How you been?
Good. And producer Hannah.
What up?
We are wrapping up our day 2 of Wake Up Columbia Takeover. Branden will be back with us tomorrow. So, Brian,
yes.
We have, Hannah sent me this article about the train derailment.
Mm-hmm.
You said, folks are still stranded up there. We've got
Yes,
folks on the way to investigate. But this story will really warm your heart about what had happened, even though it was a tragedy. Apparently, there were 2 Boy Scout troops on the train. Fox is reporting they had been out in a backpacking trip in New Mexico.
Wow.
They were on their way back to home, which was somewhere in Wisconsin. And the 2 Boy Scout troops, having trained in first aid and learned everything you learn in the Scouts, were some of the first to respond to the folks on the train. Specifically, they say it was a 15-year-old boy who got to the dump truck driver first before he had passed away. And so they said the 15-year-old comforted the driver, stabilized the driver. And as you said, it took a while for the first responders to get, just because they were so remote. And so these young kids, Troop 73 and Troop 12, consisting of 16 boys age 13 to 17, were on that train and sprung into action to help their fellow passengers. So and we know there were other folks from around mid-Missouri offering assistance and kind of racing to the scene to try to help out. But nice to see. And I know we've had other situations. When I first came onto the show, there was a near drowning incident, and it was a local Boy Scout who sprung into action and I think made the national news for saving someone's life. So always, so appreciative of all the things the Scouts do to teach our young folks, and it sounds like they really made a difference yesterday in the lives of many. So
that's great. My mother last night, Stephanie, had mentioned to me that there were Boy Scouts on the train, and I don't know, maybe she'd seen it on Fox. I even told her I had not heard that. It was not mentioned at the press conference, and that is amazing. And that verifies what was an initial report that I think was one of the reporters at 17, when they were first getting a report that dump truck driver was still alive at some point. And as you mentioned, comforting that person, obviously, and I don't know what kind of injuries. It sounded like it was just absolutely horrible, but that's pretty impressive. 15 years old, to have that kind of composure. To be able to do that is amazing, and I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that, because there's always positive things in things like this, and people coming together to help people they don't even know. But that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's heartwarming. So while I have you here, Brian, I want to ask you about the history of and the purpose behind interim committees in the legislature. So there's some news this week. I guess I think it's the first interim committee hearing to take place of all of them, I think, is happening tomorrow, and it's the interim committee on illegal immigration, and that's going to be chaired by Senator Brown, and they're set to meet this week. My understanding, the Senate has 3 interim committees, one on education, one on firefighting districts, and one on illegal immigration. And, in an election year, folks are really busy on the campaign trail. Sure. You don't see a ton of action, when the legislature is out. But these interim committees really do serve, a pretty significant purpose, I think. And, from your past dealings in covering the interim committees, what are their purpose, and what do you kind of see come out of them?
I think they're very important, and they are. When I worked at Missouri Net, I felt like many times I was the only one who would go to the hearings. Not always, but not all of them are necessarily hot button topics. But what they all have in common is news. I would always get great news information. A lot of stuff about the broadband all that came out of interim committees. The committee was led by Doug Ritchie, and that would have been last year. There have been interim committees on gaming. That was a huge one that Dan Scholl headed up right before the pandemic. It all depends on who the speaker is and the pro tem, but you're right. I just checked to make sure. There's one on education. There's one on the firefighting districts, and this one is, again, being I'm not at the Capitol now, not sure what that's involved. Could be about specifically one region of the state, but it's there. Illegal immigration's always been a big issue with Republicans at the Capitol, and you're right, they're going to have a hearing coming up. But the idea here with these committees is to take testimony, to bring in witnesses, and then to produce a report and send the report to the legislature. They usually will do it by December. Traditionally, and sometimes they get shelved. What I find that happens a lot is they'll do a press briefing, or they'll let us know, and then they'll say this is something we really want the legislature to take on in January, and by the time January rolls around, something else has come up. Very few. I'm not saying this will happen in this situation, but it's hard, and there's going to be a new speaker next year, the new pro tem. They'll have their own priorities, so we'll have to wait and see. But it's certainly newsworthy, and in some years you have more than others. Some will say, well, they're doing it because they are, they're running for re-election. And then others will complain, well, and they're not saying Chuck Basie, but let's use him as an example. Well, Chuck Basie's on the committee. They haven't said that. He's term limited. He doesn't have to face the voters. You can't win. You can't win. Folks, you're going to either have to run for office or you're term limited out. Either way, you may be on one of these committees. And whether it's an interim or not, they're going to have to meet. So I don't take a whole lot of stock in that. The bottom line is they're important and they are newsworthy.
So fair to say right now, those could be, kind of indicators of where the speaker's priorities are, but no guarantees that this is where we're going to see the priorities line up in January.
No guarantees, and it all depends, great point, by the way, and I think a lot of it has to do with Caleb Branden will be the pro tem of the Senate. He'll have things that he'll want to focus on. Dean Plocher will have his priorities as speaker. But, gaming in I think it was 2019, I covered 4 or 5 gaming issues in hearings. And everyone thought that gambling would be the big issue in 2020. It was a slam dunk. It was going to pass. And then pandemic hit. And then one year it was, it was transportation. Back in 2017, it was transportation. Dave Schatz wanted to do the gas tax then. That was going to be the big deal. And then Greitens ran into his problems with the legislature. So things like there's roadblocks. And I can't remember, one year there was something else, and General Motors came down here and wanted a big, basically they wanted a tax credits or something with their Wentzville plant. And it was a big deal because they ended up investing, hundreds of millions of dollars into that facility. So even if it is a priority for the speaker, even if it is a priority for the governor, inevitably something else always seems to come up that pushes something like this off to the side. That's been my experience.
Well, and it seems like with everything that's going on in Russia and Ukraine and with our gas prices, energy isn't on that list, but is top of mind for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And yesterday we had some news right here in Missouri with Ameren.
Yes.
Have we found any more? Are there any additional details out about their solar plant?
Not a lot. And again, I would have covered it more. It's one of those things, again, because of the derailment and stuff that didn't make it into my newscast this morning. I'll probably pick it back up tomorrow, but I did a little more research on it. It's Huckfin. They're looking at Audrain and they're looking at Rawls. They could be the biggest solar facility that they are doing 250 jobs in those counties. It is a big deal. There's no doubt about it. With some of our listeners, they seem more interested in nuclear or coal. But again, it is jobs, and they still have their Labadie plant. So we'll see. But I don't know. I don't know that they'll do anything more on that other than their statement. But it is something that they've tried to do alternative energy. I know that they have got several big wind projects up in Atchison County that I've reported on before. Big projects up there. They're involved with Tarkio, the former Tarkio College, which has a degree, by the way, right now in wind, basically wind energy. They don't have one for solar, but Ameren has done other work with renewables before.
All right. Well, that's a good update on what's happening in the state. The legislature, I know, many of our local representatives will tell you it's a year-round job and they've got a lot going on. So we'll be watching what's going on with the interim committee and see how that might affect what we can expect to see in January, may or may not.
Absolutely.
And coming up, I think we're going to get into. We'll keep it with our leftovers. So there's lots of small things we didn't get to yet today on 93.9 The Eagle, and we'll get around to some of those quickly here at the bottom of the hour.
Several years ago, I met this guy by the name of Greg Hodges, and I knew him from Hodges Roofing and Siding, and I'm like, so Greg, what is it that people say about you? And he says, well, people say I'm an obsessive serial roofer. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, I just do little things. For example, I use the highest quality. I do 5 nails per shingle, not 4. And that's why I believe in Hodges Roofing and Siding. I am Branden Rathert for Hodges Roofing and Siding. They give you the best warranty. Listen, it's great. Somebody shows up at your house. They do roofing work. Maybe they're doing a whole new roof. And then shortly after, you're finding issues and you have that moment of doubt. Well, I don't know what this company is going to do. That is not the case. That is not the case with Hodges Roofing and Siding. They offer the best warranty. And it's those little details, matching the color of paints and the piping, things like that. Check out Hodges Roofing and Siding. Been doing this since 1976. HodgesRoofingandSiding.com.
This is Stephanie Bell in for Branden Rathert, who has the day off. We are going to do some leftovers. Hannah, your What's Hot with Hannah being wedding season from yesterday got quite a few responses. Is there a consensus?
Did. So I was very surprised. I really figured that, most people would be upset if they attended a wedding that did not have a meal provided. I was very wrong. And there's almost 100 comments. And basically everyone is saying, no, I wouldn't be upset. Like, that's not the reason you go to a wedding. You go to a wedding to support the happy couple. And basically people are saying, save the money and don't do a meal.
Wow, I am surprised by that. I always like the food at weddings. Did you ask Chris Arps if he had a meal at his wedding?
Oh, yes. And he had steak and chicken. He was sure to tell me that they had both.
I was in law school during my wedding, so I apologize to anyone who ate the food because I was on a significant budget, and I agree it was not that good. But we did serve food. Whether or not it was good food, that is up for debate.
Now, several folks were saying that really in the last several years, it's become more of a norm to have a meal at the wedding. But back in the day, it was really just maybe wedding cake and soda or punch, and that was what you expected when you went to a wedding.
Interesting. Well, I think Gen Z is still on mostly dinner. I mean, you've been to a lot of weddings lately, mostly dinner weddings.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. My friend had breakfast for dinner for her wedding, and I still think that was an excellent decision. And if I had to do a wedding, again today, I would do that. I love breakfast for dinner. It'd be great.
Something else that I've noticed becoming more popular with people my age is getting married on weekdays. Or even on Sundays. And I think the main reason is a lot of wedding venues are cheaper, during the week, rather than on the weekends, because those days are in higher demand.
Not just that Gen Zers don't have jobs, so they can get married in the middle of the week.
Come on, Steph. But no, there's lots of Sunday weddings that I've seen here lately, or even a Thursday night.
Sure.
People are kind of ditching the stereotype that you have to get married on a Saturday.
I like it. I like people being creative, and I like going to my favorite part about weddings is when the couple can personalize the experience to them, and it's not just the same thing over and over. So,
but if you get invited to a Thursday wedding, are you kind of salty that you have to take off work?
Nah.
No? Well, I guess you're your own boss.
I am.
So you kind of get to set your schedule, but I don't know. I might be a little upset if I had to take a day off work to go to your wedding.
Okay. Well, I'll remember that. I don't plan on getting remarried anytime soon, although if I could just throw the party again, I would definitely do that. So some things we didn't get fully to today. We did talk about the Bruin case, the guns case from last Thursday, but yesterday the Supreme Court did decide Kennedy v. Bremerton School District, and that's the high school football coach who prayed by himself after the game. Interestingly enough, it put this lemon test to rest. It killed the lemon test, which if you heard my red flag discussion earlier, there's lots of district court decisions out there that rely on this test. And that test really talked about whether a reasonable observer would consider the government's challenged action an endorsement. And the court said, you know what, that's a weird test. It's too unworkable and we don't need to go there. And I have to read this quote from Justice Scalia, who wrote about the lemon test in a different decision. And he said, like some ghoul in a late night horror movie that repeatedly sits up in its grave and shuffles abroad after being repeatedly killed and buried, Lemon stalks our establishment clause jurisprudence once again. And that's what he said about the test. And yesterday's decision, the court said, yep, that test is out. This guy who wants to pray by himself after the game, because, the other coaching staff, they get a little bit of personal time after the game. If he wants to use his personal time to pray, he can do that. So a big win for those practicing religion and free exercise and wanting to be able to practice whatever you want and have the government stay out of your business. Yesterday, a huge win, an opinion by Justice Gorsuch. You'll be hearing, I'm sure, more about that. Again, there are a lot of states. So now that Dobbs has been decided and it's kicked back to the states, we've got these state trigger laws. And so we've already seen, I think, in 2 different states, challenges to the state trigger laws on whether or not the state can proceed in regulating abortion at the state level. Those suits, I suspect there will be more in the days to come. Some other things that we want to watch today that January 6th committee. Hannah, do you remember this? Wasn't it 2 weeks ago where they said, oh no, this hearing we've had scheduled forever, we can't go forward on because we have to, edit some video or something?
It was something like that. They needed more time to prepare, basically.
And then yesterday, suddenly,
oh God,
everyone thought that everyone was going home for the 4th of July break, as they typically do. And yesterday they said, you know what? I think we can have a hearing 24 hours from now. And so this afternoon, the January 6th committee will be meeting again. Apparently, it must be very important, whatever it is. Or maybe they're just making it sound important so more people tune in. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that the whole thing is a big circus and they're wasting taxpayer dollars. That's what I think.
I think you're probably right. Also, what we need to watch today, I guess the HHS secretary is going to make an announcement in response to whatever Biden's policy or response to Dobbs is. So the federal government will have something to say about Dobbs beyond just that litigation that's occurring in the states. And so I think a lot of people are going to be interested in what steps the federal government might take next as far as abortion policy goes. We've seen the talk of them, somehow codifying an abortion right. Obviously, I think that would end up in court as well. And so those are two things I'm going to be watching today. We are also coming up tomorrow. Branden will be back with us, and we will be giving you the latest on the primaries from today. I think there are 7 states that have primaries, some, again, states that have a Trump endorsement, so that's always on their radar. And hopefully we will have some more info on and be able to discuss that Senate race. The ads are dropping left and right, both pro ads and opposition ads. I'm hoping we can maybe even play some of those for you and get your takes. So obviously, a lot of people had a response to the last Greitens ad. So Branden's back tomorrow. We're looking forward, as always, to Branden's dad's favorite show, the Gary Nolan Show, coming up. And we will see you tomorrow. Bye.